Hi everyone. Great to have you here at Imagineverse. Get comfortable because today we're presenting, What If Harry Was Born with Veela Blood and Every Witch at Hogwarts Could Feel His Magical Pull. Before we start, a gentle reminder, if you love stories like this, please like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm show our videos to more people. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. Chapter 1, Awakening Blood. The first sign that something was different came to Harry Potter on his 13th birthday. He'd been sitting on his bed at number 4 Privet Drive, counting down the minutes to midnight as had become his tradition. The hands of his repaired alarm clock ticked steadily toward 12, while the summer breeze drifted through his partially opened window. His birthday had never been a celebration with the Dursleys, but at least this year they'd mostly left him alone, still traumatized by Aunt Marge's inflation incident a few days prior. As the clock struck midnight, a sudden heat flushed through Harry's body. It wasn't painful, exactly, but intense, like someone had replaced his blood with warm honey that now flowed thickly through his veins. He gasped, dropping the quill he'd been toying with, and clutched at his chest. "What the?" he whispered to the empty room. Hedwig hooted softly from her cage, her amber eyes tracking his movements with unusual intensity. The sensation passed after several moments, leaving Harry feeling strangely lightheaded. He stumbled to the cracked mirror above his dresser. His reflection looked the same, unruly black hair, green eyes behind round glasses, the lightning scar cutting across his forehead. Yet something felt fundamentally altered, as though his skin no longer fit quite right. "Happy birthday to me," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. It felt softer between his fingers, almost silky. Probably just his imagination. 3 owls arrived within minutes of each other, bearing birthday wishes and gifts from Ron, Hermione, and Hagrid. As he read their letters, Harry tried to forget the strange sensation. Between Sirius Black's escape from Azkaban and the upcoming school year, he had enough to worry about without mysterious midnight transformations. Yet when he finally fell asleep that night, his dreams were filled with silver fire and distant, beautiful singing. The rest of the summer passed in a blur of tension at the Dursleys and anticipation for his return to Hogwarts. Harry noticed small changes: his hair grew faster than usual, his vision seemed slightly sharper even with his old prescription, and occasionally he caught his aunt staring at him with a puzzled expression, as if trying to place what was different. When Harry finally arrived at the Leaky Cauldron after his ill-advised escape from Privet Drive, Tom the innkeeper did a visible double-take. "Bless me, it's Harry Potter!" he exclaimed, as usual. But then he paused, blinking rapidly. "You've changed, young sir." Harry frowned. "Have I?" Tom seemed to struggle for words. "Just, growing up, I suppose. Can I get you anything?" "On the house, of course." "Just a room, thanks," Harry replied, uncomfortable with Tom's lingering gaze. Similar encounters followed him through Diagon Alley. Madame Malkin fumbled with her measuring tape during his robe fitting, and the witch at Flourish and Blots kept finding excuses to brush against his hand while helping him locate his textbooks. It was Florian Fortescue who finally said something directly, as he handed Harry an ice cream sundae, his third free one that week. "You know," the ice cream proprietor said thoughtfully, "you remind me of someone I knew years ago." Had the same effect on people. Though if I recall, Fleamont never quite knew what to do with it either. "Fleamont?" Harry asked, confused. "Your grandfather," Fortescue smiled. "Interesting family, the Potters. More interesting than most realize." Before Harry could ask what he meant, a group of young witches entered the shop, and Fortescue moved away to serve them. Harry couldn't help but notice how several of them glanced in his direction, whispering behind their hands. He finished his ice cream quickly and left, deciding to find Ron and Hermione. Maybe they could make sense of whatever was happening. The platform at King's Cross was crowded as always on September 1st. Harry pushed his trolley through the barrier between platforms 9 and 10, emerging onto platform 9 3/4 where the Scarlet Hogwarts Express waited amid clouds of steam. He spotted the Weasleys immediately, their flaming red hair unmistakable in the crowd, and made his way toward them. "Harry, dear." Mrs. Weasley beamed, enfolding him in a hug. When she pulled back, her expression changed subtly. "My, you've grown over the summer. And your hair looks—" She reached out as if to touch it, then seemed to catch herself, dropping her hand with a faint blush. "Harry!" Ron called, saving him from the awkward moment. "Thought you'd never get here. Hermione's already found a compartment." As they loaded Harry's trunk onto the train, he noticed Ginny standing slightly apart from the group. When he caught her eye, she went scarlet and knocked over her own trunk. "Ginny, are you all right?" Harry asked, moving to help her. "Fine," she squeaked, backing away so quickly she nearly tripped again. "I'm fine. Just, clumsy." Ron rolled his eyes. "She's been weird all morning. More than usual, I mean." Once aboard the train and settled in their compartment with Hermione, and the sleeping Professor Lupin, Harry felt himself relax slightly. Here were his best friends, who knew him better than anyone. "How was your summer, Hermione?" he asked. Hermione looked up from her book and froze, her eyes widening slightly as she took him in properly for the first time. She began, then stopped, blinking several times. "Sorry. It was fine. France was lovely." She continued to stare at him in a most un-Hermione-like way. "What?" Harry asked, growing uncomfortable. "Do I have something on my face?" Hermione shook her head as if clearing it. No. You just look different. That's what everyone keeps saying." "Well, you do," Ron interjected, squinting at Harry. "Can't put my finger on it, but something's off." "Thanks," Harry said dryly. "Not bad off," Ron clarified. "Just different." The compartment door slid open, revealing a group of fifth-year Ravenclaw girls. "Oh," said one with dark curly hair. "We were just looking for—" She stopped mid-sentence, staring at Harry. "I mean, we were just—" The girl beside her actually sighed. "We can sit here if you'd like," she offered, though the compartment was clearly full. "Sorry," Hermione said sharply. "No room, as you can see." The girls reluctantly backed away, but not before casting lingering glances at Harry. Similar interruptions continued throughout the journey, students accidentally entering their compartment, prefects performing unnecessary patrols, even the trolley witch making 3 separate trips to ask if they wanted anything. "What is going on today?" Harry finally exploded after a 7th-year Hufflepuff had stammered through a completely transparent excuse about looking for her cat. "I have no idea," Hermione said, though her tone suggested she might have some theories. She'd recovered from her initial strange reaction and now seemed to be studying Harry with scholarly interest rather than whatever had affected her before. The train journey took a darker turn when Dementors boarded to search for Sirius Black. As the compartment grew cold and Harry felt the horrific creature's presence, something unexpected happened. The strange warm sensation he'd felt on his birthday surged through him again, almost like a defense mechanism. While he still heard his mother's screams and ultimately fainted, he later learned from Hermione that just before he collapsed, a brief silver glow had emanated from his skin. "It was like your whole body tried to cast a Patronus," she whispered as they rode the carriages to the castle. "I've read about them, but never seen one. Professor Lupin cast a proper one to drive the Dementor away, but Harry, for a moment, you were glowing." "Great," Harry muttered. One more weird thing to add to the list. The first week of classes proved challenging in entirely new ways for Harry. It wasn't the coursework itself, although Professor Trelawney's death prediction in divination was unsettling, but rather the strange behavior that followed him everywhere. In charms, Professor Flitwick squeaked and fell off his stack of books when Harry entered the classroom. In herbology, 2 Hufflepuff girls fought over who would share Harry's tray of puffapods, something that had never happened before. Even Lavender and Parvati, who had never shown much interest in Harry beyond his connection to the boy who lived, now found excuses to sit near him and ask for his help with assignments. The situation came to a head during the first potions class of the year. As the Gryffindors and Slytherins filed into the dungeon classroom, Pansy Parkinson, who had always regarded Harry with nothing but contempt, bumped deliberately into him at the door. "Watch where you're going, Potter," she snapped, but her voice lacked its usual venom, and she maintained contact with his shoulder a moment longer than necessary. Snape's entrance should have restored order, but even he seemed momentarily thrown off balance when his gaze landed on Harry. He blinked twice, his sallow face registering something almost like recognition before hardening into its customary sneer. "Mr. Potter," Snape said, his voice softer and more dangerous than usual. "Our newest, celebrity attraction, it seems." Halfway through brewing a shrinking solution, disaster struck. Millicent Bulstrode, attempting to peer around Goyle to look at Harry, knocked over her cauldron. The half-finished potion splashed across the floor, causing students to jump onto their stools. In the commotion, Pansy crashed into Draco, whose own cauldron teetered precariously. "Enough!" Snape bellowed, freezing the spilled potion with a wave of his wand. His black eyes fixed on Harry with unusual intensity. "Potter, remain after class. The rest of you, clean up this mess immediately." When the classroom had emptied, Snape circled Harry like a predator, observing him from all angles. "Sir." Harry ventured after the silence had stretched uncomfortably long. "I should have anticipated this," Snape said, more to himself than to Harry. "The timing aligns perfectly." "Anticipated what, Professor?" Snape's lips thinned. "That is not for me to explain. The headmaster will want to speak with you." He scribbled a note and handed it to Harry. "Take this to Professor Dumbledore immediately. The password is Sugar Quills." "But what's happening to me?" Harry demanded. Something almost like pity flickered across Snape's features. "You are your father's son in more ways than were immediately apparent, Potter. Now go." "Ah, Harry," Professor Dumbledore said as Harry entered his office. "Professor Snape mentioned you might be paying me a visit soon." Lemon drop? Harry declined the candy, too anxious for small talk. "Professor, something's happening to me, and I don't understand it. Everyone's acting strangely around me, and I felt this weird sensation on my birthday, and," Dumbledore held up a hand, his blue eyes twinkling though his expression remained serious. "Please, sit down, Harry. What you're experiencing is both expected and unexpected. Expected, because it often manifests around the 13th year, but unexpected because we believe the bloodline too diluted in your case." "What bloodline?" Harry asked, leaning forward. "Is this about being a Potter?" In a manner of speaking, Dumbledore nodded. "Harry, what do you know about Veela?" "Veela?" Harry frowned. "Nothing, sir." "What are they?" Dumbledore stroked his long beard thoughtfully. "Veela are magical beings, primarily female, known for their extraordinary beauty and ability to entrance those attracted to them. They have their own form of magic, wandless, instinctive, that manifests as a kind of aura. This aura draws others to them, creates fascination, even obsession in extreme cases." Harry's stomach dropped. "And this relates to me, how?" "The Potter family has a secret that has been closely guarded for generations," Dumbledore explained. "Approximately 7 generations ago, your ancestor Hardwin Potter married a half-Veela which named Iolanthe. While male Veela are exceptionally rare, and the traits typically dormant in men of mixed ancestry, the bloodline has persisted. It manifests occasionally, usually diluted, in Potter men." "My father?" Harry asked, his mouth dry. "James had certain qualities," Dumbledore confirmed. "A natural charm, an ease with people that went beyond normal charisma. But the blood was weak in him, 1/32 Veela, perhaps less. In you, however. It's stronger," Harry finished, remembering the silver glow Hermione had described. "Indeed. Magic works in mysterious ways, Harry. Your mother's sacrifice, the protective magic in your blood, it seems to have awakened this dormant heritage, amplified it. Harry ran his hands through his hair in frustration. So what does this mean? Am I going to have girls following me around forever? Because I don't want that, Professor. Dumbledore's expression grew solemn. The effects can be managed, controlled. With practice, you can learn to suppress your aura, direct it, even shut it off entirely for short periods. But it will require discipline. Will everyone be affected? Harry asked, thinking of his friends. Those attracted to males will feel it most strongly, though the intensity varies based on individual susceptibility. Those with strong minds, those in love with others, those with certain magical resistances, all may experience reduced effects. Harry thought of Hermione's initial reaction followed by her quick recovery. That explained something, at least. What about Professor Snape? Harry asked. He seemed to recognize what was happening. A small smile touched Dumbledore's lips. Professor Snape attended Hogwarts with your father, Harry. He has encountered Veela traits before, albeit in a milder form. Harry absorbed this information, connecting it to Snape's bitter resentment. If his father had unknowingly attracted attention away from Snape, it added yet another layer to their complicated history. So what do I do now? Harry finally asked. For the immediate future, Professor McGonagall will begin teaching you concentration techniques to help manage your aura. She has experience in this area. In the meantime, Dumbledore reached into his desk and removed a small silver pendant. This may help. He handed the pendant to Harry, a simple design of intertwined silver wires forming a small cage around what looked like a tiny feather. A Veela feather, freely given, Dumbledore explained. Wearing this will dampen your aura somewhat, not eliminate it, but reduce its range and intensity. It should make day-to-day interactions more manageable. Harry slipped the chain over his head immediately, feeling a subtle shift as the pendant settled against his chest. The constant humming energy he hadn't even realized he was carrying seemed to quiet slightly. Thank you, Professor. There is one more thing, Harry, Dumbledore said, his expression growing serious. Knowledge of Veela blood in wizarding families is sensitive information. There are those who would seek to exploit such a connection. I recommend discretion regarding your heritage. Harry nodded, understanding the implications. Can I tell Ron and Hermione? Your closest friends should know, yes. They may be affected differently, and their understanding will be important. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled again. Miss Granger, I suspect, is already researching possible explanations for your new circumstances. Harry couldn't help but smile at that. Hermione in research mode was as predictable as the sunrise. You should return to your dormitory now, Dumbledore said. Professor McGonagall will contact you about your first lesson. And Harry? This aspect of yourself, while challenging, is neither good nor bad in itself. Like all power, its nature depends entirely on how you choose to use it. Harry found Ron and Hermione waiting anxiously in the Gryffindor common room. The moment he entered, Hermione jumped up from her chair, a large tome open on her lap. Harry! I think I've figured it out. I've been reading about magical inheritances and there's this section on creature blood that activates during puberty and, I'm part Veela, Harry interrupted, dropping into an armchair beside them. Ron's mouth fell open. You're what? Hermione's expression shifted from surprise to satisfaction. I knew it. Page 347 of Magical Genealogy and Hereditary Traits mentions the Potter family having connections to various magical beings, though it was vague on specifics. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. That explains why my sister can barely form sentences around you now. And why Lavender kept dropping her quill in Transfiguration just so you'd pick it up for her. Harry grimaced. Dumbledore says I can learn to control it. McGonagall's going to help me. McGonagall? Ron looked skeptical. What does she know about Veela stuff? I don't know, Harry admitted. Dumbledore just said she has experience. This actually makes a lot of sense, Hermione said, flipping pages in her book. Veela have a natural affinity for air and fire magic. Your exceptional flying ability, Harry, that could be partially attributed to Veela heritage. They're naturally gifted flyers. Great, Harry muttered. So now I can't even take credit for being good at Quidditch. That's not what I meant, Hermione said quickly. Your skill is still your own. The affinity just helps. Ron was still processing the revelation. So you're going to have witches throwing themselves at you for the rest of your life? Some guys have all the luck. It's not luck, Ron, Harry snapped. It's horrible. They don't actually like me, they're just enchanted or whatever. Besides, it's not just witches. Apparently, it affects anyone attracted to males. Did you notice Colin Creevey practically fainted when I waved at him yesterday? Ron's expression sobered. Sorry, mate. Didn't think of it that way. The pendant helps, Harry said, showing them Dumbledore's gift. And hopefully McGonagall's training will too. Hermione examined the pendant with interest. Veela feather. Fascinating. Their magical properties are rarely studied because they're so difficult to obtain. She hesitated before asking, Harry, how diluted is your Veela heritage supposed to be? Because based on the effects we're seeing. Dumbledore said it should be very diluted, Harry answered. My dad had some traits, but nothing like, whatever's happening with me. Something must have amplified it, Hermione mused. Perhaps when. She glanced at his scar meaningfully. Maybe, Harry agreed. Dumbledore mentioned my mother's protection might have interacted with the dormant Veela blood. Ron shook his head. Just when I thought your life couldn't get more complicated, mate. Tell me about it, Harry sighed. And the cherry on top. Dumbledore says I need to keep this secret because people might try to exploit me for it. He's right, Hermione said seriously. Veela-derived potions and magical items are highly regulated. Having access to someone with active Veela blood would be valuable to the wrong sort of people. A thought suddenly occurred to Harry. Hang on, do you think this is why Sirius Black is after me? His friends exchanged alarmed glances. I doubt it, Hermione said after a moment. From what we know, Black was your father's best friend. If anyone would already know about Potter family secrets, it would be him. Unless that's exactly why he's coming after you, Ron countered. Maybe he wants to use your Veela, whatever it is, for something dark. The thought sent a chill through Harry, but Hermione shook her head firmly. Pure speculation, she said. Let's focus on what we do know and can control. Harry needs to learn to manage this new ability, and we need to help create a buffer between him and the rest of the school until he can. Right, Ron nodded. Operation Shield Harry from his fan club begins now. Despite everything, Harry smiled. Whatever strange turn his life had taken now, at least he could count on his friends to stand by him. The following morning, Harry entered the Great Hall wearing his silver pendant and flanked by Ron and Hermione. They'd agreed on a strategy: stay together as much as possible, avoid isolated corridors, and shut down any obvious enchantment-induced advances firmly but kindly. Their plan immediately faced its first test when a group of fourth-year Hufflepuff girls detoured from their table to, accidentally, walk past Harry 3 times. Morning, Harry, one called, twirling her hair. Did you do something different with your hair? It looks so shiny. Just regular shampoo, Harry muttered, focusing on his breakfast. Ron snorted into his pumpkin juice, earning a kick under the table from Hermione. The owls arrived with the morning mail, and to Harry's surprise, several unfamiliar ones dropped letters in front of him alongside Hedwig. He opened the first cautiously, only to find a note scented with perfume. Harry, your eyes shine like emeralds in the sunlight. Would you help me with defense against the dark arts sometime? Admiringly, Emma, Ravenclaw. You've got to be joking, Harry groaned, showing the note to Ron and Hermione. Who's Emma? Ron asked, scanning the Ravenclaw table. I have no idea, Harry said, opening another letter. This one contained a sketch of him catching the snitch, clearly drawn with considerable care and talent. "This is going to be worse than we thought," Hermione said, taking the letters and vanishing them with a quick spell. "We need a more proactive approach." Before they could discuss further strategies, Professor McGonagall approached their table. "Mr. Potter, my office after your morning classes, please. We have that special tutoring to discuss." Harry nodded, grateful for her discretion. "Yes, Professor." McGonagall's eyes lingered on his pendant briefly. "That should help somewhat, but don't rely on external aids alone." With that cryptic advice, she returned to the staff table. Across the hall, Harry noticed Draco Malfoy watching the proceedings with narrowed eyes. Unlike the affected girls, Malfoy's expression showed only suspicion and calculation, clearly trying to understand what was happening with his nemesis and how it might be exploited. "Malfoy's going to be a problem," Harry murmured to his friends. "When isn't he?" Ron replied, but Hermione looked concerned. "If he figures it out, Harry." "I know," Harry said. "Just one more thing to worry about." Professor McGonagall's office was as neat and orderly as one would expect, with tartan biscuit tins on the corner of her desk and a warm fire crackling in the grate despite the mild September weather. "Sit down, Mr. Potter," she said, gesturing to a chair opposite her desk. "I understand Professor Dumbledore has informed you about your heritage." "Yes, Professor," Harry replied, fidgeting with the pendant beneath his robes. "He said you could help me learn to control it." McGonagall's expression softened slightly. "Indeed. While I am not an expert in Veela magic specifically, I have relevant experience in this area." She stood and moved to a cabinet, retrieving a small stone basin that Harry recognized as a pensieve. "Sometimes," she continued, "it's easier to show than to tell." She touched her wand to her temple, drawing out a silvery strand of memory and depositing it in the basin. "With your permission, Mr. Potter, I'd like to share a memory that might help explain my qualifications." "Curious," Harry nodded. McGonagall gestured for him to approach the pensieve, and together they leaned forward until the office dissolved around them. They landed in what Harry recognized as the Hogwarts library, though it looked somewhat different: older books, different arrangement. Seated at a table near the restricted section was a young witch with auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun, though a few strands had escaped to frame her face. "Is that?" Harry began. "Yes, that's me," McGonagall confirmed, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Seventh year, 1954. Young Minerva McGonagall was deeply focused on an ancient runes translation, quill moving steadily across parchment. She didn't look up when a tall boy with silvery blonde hair approached her table. "Excuse me," the boy said, his voice carrying a slight accent Harry couldn't place. "Is this seat taken?" Young Minerva glanced up, ready to decline, but something happened when she met the boy's eyes. She froze, her quill dripping ink onto her perfect translation. A faint blush spread across her cheeks. No, it's not taken," she stammered, utterly unlike the composed Professor McGonagall Harry knew. The boy smiled, revealing perfect teeth. "Thank you. I'm Stefan. Exchange student from Durmstrang." "Minerva McGonagall," young Minerva replied, still staring. As the scene continued, Harry noticed how Minerva struggled to return to her work, constantly stealing glances at Stefan. Other girls in the library found excuses to walk past their table, some dropping books or pretending to search nearby shelves. "He was part Veela," the present-day McGonagall explained. "The first male with active Veela traits I'd ever encountered. Most of the female student population was utterly besotted within a week of his arrival." The memory shifted, showing a different scene: young Minerva and Stefan sitting by the lake, engaged in serious conversation. "I hate it," memory Stefan was saying. "They don't see me. They see this." He gestured to his face, his perfect features twisted in frustration. "I came to Britain to escape it. At Durmstrang, they wanted to study me like a specimen." Young Minerva's expression showed dawning understanding. That's why you approached me in the library. I was affected least. Stefan nodded. You recovered quickest. Most never do. He sighed. My grandmother taught me techniques to suppress the aura, but they're difficult to maintain constantly. Teach me the techniques, young Minerva said suddenly. Then teach me to resist the effects. If I can learn both sides, perhaps I can help you practice control. The present McGonagall drew Harry out of the memory, and they were back in her office. She returned to her seat, looking slightly embarrassed but resolute. Stefan Lindholm taught me occlumency, the magical art of shielding one's mind, both to help him practice controlling his aura and to help me resist it. Over the course of that year, I became quite proficient at both. What happened to him? Harry asked. McGonagall's expression grew distant. He returned to his family in Sweden after graduation. We corresponded for many years. He eventually married a witch who, like me, was less susceptible to his aura and could see him for himself. She straightened in her chair, becoming the brisk professor again. The techniques he taught me can be adapted to your situation, Mr. Potter. Harry felt a surge of hope. So I can learn to control this? With practice and discipline, yes. Though I must warn you that occlumency is challenging, and the specific application to Veela magic adds another layer of complexity. I'll do whatever it takes, Harry said firmly. McGonagall nodded approvingly. Very well. We will begin with the basics. Close your eyes, Mr. Potter, and focus on your breathing. For the next hour, McGonagall guided Harry through fundamental meditation exercises, teaching him to identify the magical energy flowing through him. The Veela aura, she explained, emanated from this energy but could be directed with practice, like learning to channel magic through a wand. Your pendant helps contain the aura, she said as the lesson concluded, but think of it as a temporary crutch, not a solution. True mastery comes from within. Harry nodded, mentally exhausted but determined. When can we practice again? Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings, to start, McGonagall replied. And Potter? You'll need to practice the meditation exercises daily, preferably morning and night. Without consistent effort, you'll see little progress. Yes, Professor. Harry stood to leave, then hesitated. Professor, can I ask, why did you show me that memory? The personal details, I mean. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. Because you needed to understand that I comprehend both sides of your predicament, Mr. Potter. I know what it's like to be affected by Veela charm against one's will, and I've witnessed firsthand the burden it places on the one emitting it. She adjusted her spectacles. Now, I believe you have transfiguration homework to complete before our next class. Harry recognized the dismissal and headed for the door, but McGonagall called after him. And Potter? Your father managed this challenge, as did his father before him. You will too. Harry's first official session with McGonagall had helped, but controlling his aura proved extraordinarily difficult. The pendant dampened the effect somewhat, but it wasn't foolproof. By mid-September, the situation had escalated from awkward to nearly unmanageable. Katie Bell accidentally sent a bludger toward Harry during Quidditch practice just so she could apologize profusely afterward. Hannah Abbott spilled an entire bottle of armadillo bile and potions when Harry asked to borrow her scales. Even Pansy Parkinson, despite her loyalty to Malfoy, had taken to finding fault with Harry in ways that required her to engage with him directly. This is getting ridiculous, Hermione declared after rescuing Harry from a group of fifth years who had cornered him outside the library. You can't even walk to class alone anymore. I'm practicing the techniques, Harry said defensively. They're not easy. We know, mate, Ron assured him. But maybe we need something to buy you some time while you learn. Hermione's eyes lit up. Actually, I've been researching potential solutions. There's a potion, of course there's a potion, Ron interjected, earning a glare. As I was saying, Hermione continued, there's a potion called Aura Dampening Draft. It's complex but not impossible. The ingredients are all available, and it would provide stronger suppression than your pendant alone. What's the catch? Harry asked, knowing from experience that magical solutions were rarely perfect. Hermione bit her lip. Well, 2 catches, actually. First, we'd need to brew it in secret, which means, Myrtle's bathroom, Harry and Ron said in unison, recalling their illicit polyjuice brewing the previous year. Yes. And second, it contains Veela hair. Harry stared at her. Where exactly am I supposed to get Veela hair? That's the thing, Hermione said hesitantly. According to my research, a Veela can only use their own hair in potions intended for themselves. So, I'd have to provide the hair, Harry finished. But I'm only part Veela. Do I even have Veela hair? Worth checking, Ron suggested. Your hair has been looking different lately. Shinier, kind of. I don't know, sleeker. Harry ran a hand through his hair self-consciously. It did feel different, still untidy, but softer, with an almost imperceptible silvery sheen in certain lights. Fine, he agreed. Let's try it. Anything's better than having Pansy Parkinson bat her eyelashes at me in potions again. Their potion plan was temporarily derailed, however, by the arrival of the first Hogsmeade weekend notice on the Gryffindor bulletin board. Harry's spirits sank as he remembered his unsigned permission slip. I'll stay with you, Ron offered immediately. We can explore the castle or something. Don't be silly, Harry said, though touched by the gesture. You and Hermione should go. Besides, maybe a day with fewer people around will be good for me. Hermione looked doubtful. Are you sure, Harry? With your condition, being alone might not be safe. I'll be fine, Harry insisted. Most students will be in Hogsmeade, and I've got my pendant. The day of the Hogsmeade visit arrived with perfect autumn weather. Harry watched wistfully as his classmates headed down to the village, ignoring the many lingering glances and whispered invitations to "find me when I get back" from various admirers. He wandered aimlessly through the quiet castle, eventually encountering Professor Lupin, who invited him for tea. To Harry's relief, Lupin showed no signs of being affected by his aura, whether due to the pendant, Lupin's natural resistance, or simply not being susceptible, Harry couldn't tell. Their conversation about Dementors and the possibility of learning the Patronus charm was the most normal interaction Harry had experienced with anyone besides Ron and Hermione in weeks. It ended abruptly, however, with Snape's arrival bearing a steaming goblet of wolfsbane potion. The brief exchange between the professors was tense, with Snape's eyes flickering to Harry several times, a calculation in his gaze that made Harry uncomfortable. After Lupin drank the potion and Snape departed, Harry couldn't help asking, "Professor, do you know about my situation?" Lupin set down his teacup carefully. "Your Veela heritage, you mean?" "Yes, Harry, I'm aware." "How?" Harry asked, surprised. "Did Dumbledore tell you?" A sad smile touched Lupin's lips. "No, though he confirmed it when I asked. I knew your father, Harry. James and I were close friends at Hogwarts, along with Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew." Harry sat up straighter. "You knew my father? And Sirius Black?" "I did," Lupin said, his expression clouding. "Your father occasionally had similar challenges to what you're experiencing, though to a lesser degree. The Potter Veela blood has been diluted over generations. In your case, it's stronger," Harry finished. "Everyone keeps saying that, but no one can explain why." Lupin seemed to choose his words carefully. "Magic often responds to trauma, Harry. The events of that Halloween night changed you in ways we may never fully understand. Your mother's protection, the curse that failed, these powerful magical events could have activated dormant aspects of your magical heritage. It made as much sense as anything else," Harry supposed. "Was my dad, was he like me?" Harry asked, hungry for any connection to his parents. "James was charismatic, certainly," Lupin said, smiling at some memory. "He had a natural way with people, though we never attributed it entirely to his heritage. By our 3rd year, he'd learned to manage the subtle aura he possessed quite well. Lupin's eyes met Harry's. Your mother, however, was notably resistant to it. That's part of what intrigued James about Lily. She saw him for who he was, not what his aura projected. Something warm bloomed in Harry's chest at this glimpse of his parents. Professor McGonagall is teaching me techniques to control it, but it's difficult. It will take time, Lupin agreed. But you have resources your father didn't. The pendant you're wearing, for instance. Harry touched the silver chain beneath his robes. You can see it? No, but I can sense it. There are certain magical artifacts that leave impressions on those sensitive to such things. Lupin coughed slightly, changing the subject. If I may ask, how are you managing the social aspects of your condition? Terribly, Harry admitted. It's a nightmare. Girls following me everywhere, people staring, love notes at breakfast. I can't even walk to class alone anymore. Lupin's expression was sympathetic. Have you considered embracing it rather than fighting it constantly? Harry looked at him in confusion. What do you mean? Magic responds to intention, Harry. The more you resist and fear your aura, the more chaotic and unpredictable it becomes. If instead you learn to accept it as part of yourself, not exploiting it, but not rejecting it either, you might find it easier to direct. Like making friends with it instead of trying to cage it? Harry suggested. Precisely, Lupin smiled. Your father found that approach helpful. The Potter Veela traits have always been milder than full Veela abilities, more subtle influence than overwhelming compulsion. With practice, James learned to focus his aura rather than suppress it entirely. Harry considered this new perspective as he finished his tea. It contradicted McGonagall's approach somewhat, but maybe there was value in both strategies. When he returned to Gryffindor Tower later, clutching his new Marauders map courtesy of Fred and George Weasley, Harry had much to think about, his father's friends, his inherited abilities, and the different approaches to managing them. The following Tuesday, Harry arrived at Professor McGonagall's office for his scheduled session but found Professor Dumbledore waiting with her instead. Good evening, Harry, the headmaster greeted him. I hope you don't mind my intrusion on your lesson. I've been monitoring your progress through Professor McGonagall, and I believe we need to adjust our approach. Harry glanced between the two professors. Sir. Your aura is growing stronger, not weaker, despite our containment efforts, McGonagall explained, her expression concerned. The pendant helps, but not enough. I'm trying the techniques, Harry said defensively. I practice the meditation every day. And I've observed your diligence, McGonagall assured him. The issue is not your effort but our strategy. Dumbledore gestured for Harry to sit. You see, Harry, we've been attempting to suppress your Veela nature as one might cap a volcano. But magic, especially inherited magic tied to one's very being, cannot be indefinitely contained. It must be channeled, directed. Professor Lupin suggested something similar, Harry said. He mentioned my father learned to focus his aura rather than suppress it. McGonagall and Dumbledore exchanged glances. Remus would have insight into James's methods, Dumbledore nodded. And while Professor McGonagall's experience with occlumency remains valuable, perhaps a combined approach would serve you better. What do you suggest, sir? Dumbledore reached into his robes and produced a small, crystal vial containing what appeared to be silvery strands, memories for a pensieve. These are memories from various sources, some provided by former professors who taught your grandfather Fleamont, some from your father's school days, and a few from magical researchers who have studied Veela magic. They may provide insights that mere instruction cannot. Harry accepted the vial carefully. Thank you, sir. But how will I view them? My pensieve will be available to you on Thursday evenings, Dumbledore replied. After dinner, come to my office, and you may explore these memories at your leisure. In the meantime, McGonagall added, we'll continue our work on focus and intention. Instead of trying to suppress your aura entirely, we'll practice directing it, making it selective rather than broadcast. The adjusted lessons proved more productive. Instead of the exhausting effort to contain his aura completely, like trying to hold his breath indefinitely, Harry learned to direct it like a wand, focusing it narrowly or diffusing it as needed. The pensive sessions were equally valuable. Harry watched in fascination as his grandfather Fleamont charmed his way through business negotiations for his Sleekeasy's hair potion empire, using subtle Veela influence to close deals while remaining ethical. He saw his father, younger than Harry was now, practicing with Sirius Black in an empty classroom, learning to project his aura toward specific objects rather than people. Most fascinating were the research memories, clinical observations of full-blooded male Veela, extraordinarily rare, demonstrating the range of their abilities, not just attraction, but subtle emotional influence, heightened empathic perception, and in one remarkable case, the ability to calm a rampaging hippogriff with nothing but sustained eye contact. The Veela gift, the researcher in the memory explained, is fundamentally about connection, creating invisible bonds between the Veela and those around them. In females, this manifests primarily as attraction and emotional manipulation. In males, it often includes heightened perception of others' emotional states, a kind of magical empathy. Harry hadn't noticed this aspect in himself, but when he mentioned it to Hermione, she looked thoughtful. "You've always been quite good at reading situations, Harry. Remember how you could tell Hagrid was keeping a secret about the Philosopher's Stone? Or how you sensed Ginny was involved with the Chamber of Secrets before we had any evidence?" "That's just observation," Harry protested. "Perhaps," Hermione allowed. "Or perhaps it's an aspect of your heritage that was active even before your birthday awakening." The combined approach of McGonagall's discipline, Dumbledore's resources, and Lupin's occasional advice began to show results by mid-October. Harry could now enter the Great Hall without causing a disruption, though he still received more attention than he wanted. The flood of unsolicited love notes had diminished to a trickle, and he could once again hold normal conversations with most of his female classmates. Progress with the aura-dampening potion continued as well. After several failed attempts, Hermione successfully brewed a batch using 3 of Harry's hairs, which had indeed developed the silvery shimmer characteristic of Veela. "It won't last long," she warned as Harry prepared to drink the murky blue liquid. "Maybe 4 hours per dose. And we can only make it in small batches because the Veela hair has to be fresh." "Still worth it," Harry said, downing the potion with a grimace. The effect was immediate, like a blanket thrown over a fire, dampening it to embers without extinguishing it completely. For the first time in weeks, Harry felt almost normal. The reprieve allowed him to focus on other concerns, Sirius Black's continued freedom, the upcoming Quidditch match against Hufflepuff, and his Patronus lessons with Lupin. Yet the Veela issue continued to create unexpected complications. After a particularly grueling Quidditch practice in pouring rain, Harry was the last to leave the changing rooms. As he gathered his things, Cedric Diggory, the Hufflepuff captain and seeker, entered. "Potter," Diggory nodded. "Good flying today, even in this weather." "Thanks," Harry replied, surprised by the compliment from his rival. Diggory lingered, seeming uncertain. "Listen, I wanted to ask, there are rumors going around about you." Harry tensed. "What kind of rumors?" "That you're using some kind of charm on people. Girls especially." Diggory looked uncomfortable but continued. "My girlfriend Cho, she's Ravenclaw's seeker, she's been acting strange when you're mentioned. And she's not the only one." "I'm not using charms on anyone," Harry said truthfully. "It's complicated." Diggory studied him for a moment. "You know, my mother's cousin married a quarter Veela witch from France. Their daughter, my second cousin, had some interesting developments when she turned 13. Harry's eyes widened. "You know about Veela traits?" A small smile crossed Diggory's face. "I've had some exposure, yes. Enough to recognize the signs in someone else." He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Is that what's happening with you, Potter?" Harry hesitated, then nodded. There seemed little point in denying it to someone already familiar with the condition. It started this summer. I'm learning to control it. Instead of the judgment or resentment Harry expected, Diggory looked sympathetic. That's rough luck, especially with your profile at Hogwarts already. Do you have support? Some professors know. And my friends. Good. Diggory straightened up. Listen, if you ever need advice from someone with family experience, well, I'm not an expert, but I've seen my cousin navigate it. Thanks, Harry said, genuinely surprised by the offer. That's decent of you. Diggory shrugged. Magical inheritances happen. No one should face them alone. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Potter. Fair warning, the Veela aura tends to spike during intense emotions. Quidditch matches, for instance. Harry groaned. Great. One more thing to worry about. Diggory's prediction proved accurate during the Gryffindor-Hufflepuff match that weekend. Despite the terrible weather and the presence of Dementors that ultimately caused Harry to fall from his broom, witnesses later reported that just before he spotted the snitch, Harry had begun to glow faintly, a silvery aura visible even through the rain. It was when you got really focused, Hermione explained as she and Ron visited Harry in the hospital wing. Your pendant actually looked like it was steaming. Great, Harry muttered, still devastated by the match loss and the destruction of his Nimbus 2000. So now I glow when I'm excited about Quidditch. Perfect. It wasn't just glowing, Ron added. It was like, everyone in the stands near you just stopped watching the game and started watching you instead. Even some of the players. Diggory nearly flew into a goal post. Harry covered his face with his hands. This is a disaster. It's not all bad, Hermione offered. Professor Lupin says strong emotions can actually help you learn to channel the aura more effectively. If you can control it during Quidditch, you can control it anywhere. Assuming I ever play again, Harry said glumly, thinking of his shattered broom. November brought new challenges. While Harry continued to make progress with his aura control, a new complication arose in the form of Draco Malfoy. The Slytherin had been observing Harry carefully since the beginning of term, and by mid-November, his suspicions had apparently crystallized. Hey, Potter. Malfoy called across the entrance hall one evening. Enjoying your new fan club? Must be nice having half the school bewitched. Harry ignored him, continuing toward the Great Hall with Ron and Hermione, but Malfoy wasn't finished. My father says male Veela are considered dangerous in some countries, he continued loudly. Something about unethical influence. Perhaps the ministry should be notified about Hogwarts harboring one. Harry froze, turning slowly to face Malfoy, who stood smirking with Crabbe and Goyle flanking him. What are you on about, Malfoy? Ron demanded, though his worried glance at Harry revealed his concern. Oh, come now, Malfoy drawled. Surely you've noticed your friend's special effect on people. Rather convenient, isn't it? The famous Harry Potter, now with added magical allure. As if being the boy who lived wasn't enough attention. Students in the entrance hall had stopped to watch the confrontation. Harry felt anger building inside him, and with it, the warm pulse of his Veela aura pushing against his control. You don't know what you're talking about, Harry said, fighting to keep his voice steady and his aura contained. Don't I? Malfoy's smile widened. My mother's family has extensive records on magical bloodlines, Potter. The Potters have some interesting ancestors. I wonder what the Daily Prophet would make of that information. Before Harry could respond, a new voice entered the conversation. 10 points from Slytherin, Mr. Malfoy, Professor McGonagall said sharply, appearing beside them. For spreading malicious rumors. They're not rumors if they're true, Professor, Malfoy replied smoothly. I'm merely concerned about the welfare of my fellow students, being subjected to magical influence without their knowledge or consent. McGonagall's nostrils flared. Another 10 points for your continued disrespect, Mr. Malfoy. And detention with Mr. Filch on Saturday. Now proceed to dinner immediately. Malfoy's pale cheeks flushed pink, but he gave a mock bow before sauntering into the great hall, Crabbe and Goyle in tow. "Mr. Potter," McGonagall said quietly once they were gone, "my office after dinner, please." Harry nodded, his stomach churning. The altercation had drawn attention, and whispers were already spreading among the watching students. "That little ferret," Ron fumed as they found seats at the Gryffindor table. "How did he figure it out?" "It was only a matter of time," Hermione said, serving herself potatoes. "People have been speculating for weeks. Someone was bound to make the connection eventually. The question is what happens now," Harry said, pushing food around his plate without eating. "If Malfoy tells his father, and Lucius Malfoy tells the Ministry or the Prophet." "We'll handle it," Hermione assured him, though she looked worried. "Dumbledore won't let anything happen to you, Harry." After dinner, Harry made his way to McGonagall's office as instructed. To his surprise, Professors Dumbledore, Snape, and Lupin were waiting with her. "Ah, Harry," Dumbledore greeted him. "Please, sit down. We need to discuss Mr. Malfoy's unfortunate discovery and our response to it." "He's going to tell everyone, isn't he?" Harry asked bleakly. "I believe Mr. Malfoy has already shared his suspicions with select individuals in Slytherin House," Snape confirmed, his expression unreadable. "However, he has yet to contact his father, as far as I am aware." "We must assume the information will spread," Dumbledore said calmly. "The question is how to manage the situation to minimize harm to you, Harry. Can't we just deny it?" Harry suggested. Lupin shook his head. "The evidence is too obvious to those who know what to look for. Denial would only add fuel to more, unsavory speculation." "Then what can we do?" Harry asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Control the narrative," McGonagall said firmly. "Rather than allow rumors to spread unchecked, we provide a simple, straightforward explanation." Dumbledore nodded. "I propose an announcement at breakfast tomorrow. A brief explanation of magical inheritance, confirmation that you have indeed experienced such an inheritance, and assurance that the situation is being properly managed under faculty supervision." "You want to tell everyone I'm part Veela?" Harry stared at the headmaster in disbelief. "Not the specifics," Dumbledore clarified. "Simply that you have experienced a magical inheritance that was anticipated by your family and that temporarily affects your magical aura. Most students will not know the details of Veela traits, and we need not elaborate. This approach," Snape added unexpectedly, "removes Draco's leverage. If the information is already public, there is no scandal to create." Harry considered this strategy. He hated the idea of any announcement, but it was better than whispered rumors and tabloid exposés. "What about the Ministry?" he asked. Malfoy mentioned regulations about influence. "Those regulations," Lupin explained, "apply primarily to full-blooded Veela using their abilities intentionally to manipulate others. They do not apply to inherited traits that emerge naturally, especially when the individual is taking steps to manage them responsibly." "Which you are," McGonagall added firmly. Harry nodded slowly. "All right. If you think it's best." "One more thing, Harry," Dumbledore said, his blue eyes serious. "Once this information becomes generally known, you may receive unwanted attention from certain quarters. There are those who might see your heritage as something to exploit." "More than already?" Harry asked with a weak attempt at humor. "Different types of attention," Lupin clarified. "Researchers, potion manufacturers, perhaps even magical creature specialists. Your status as the boy who lived already makes you a person of interest. This adds another dimension. The staff will, of course, intercept any inappropriate communications," McGonagall assured him. "But you should be prepared for increased interest in your person." Harry sighed heavily. "Just what I needed, more reasons for people to stare at me." "There is a silver lining, Potter," Snape said, speaking directly to Harry for the first time. "Once the initial sensation passes, many students may develop resistance to your influence. Particularly those with strong minds or those who see you daily. That's actually helpful, Harry admitted, surprised to receive any positive input from Snape. Your father's effect diminished significantly among those who knew him well, Snape continued, his tone neutral rather than his usual contempt when mentioning James Potter. Exposure breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds resistance. With the strategy decided, Harry returned to Gryffindor Tower to brief Ron and Hermione. Their reactions were predictably mixed, Ron concerned about the attention, Hermione practically bursting with questions about the planned announcement. Will they mention Veela specifically, she asked. Or just magical inheritance? What about the effects on others? Will they explain how it works? Hermione, Harry groaned, I don't know. Dumbledore's handling it. I just want it over with. That night, Harry barely slept, his mind racing with anxiety about the coming announcement. By morning, he felt almost relieved when Dumbledore rose at breakfast and gently tapped his goblet for attention. If I may have your attention for a brief moment, the headmaster began, his voice calm but carrying throughout the great hall. It has come to my attention that there has been speculation regarding certain changes observed in one of our students, Mr. Harry Potter. The hall fell silent, all eyes turning first to Dumbledore, then to Harry, who wanted nothing more than to disappear under the table. As many of you from magical families know, certain inherited magical traits can manifest during adolescence. The Potter family has a well-documented history of such an inheritance, which has recently activated in Mr. Potter as anticipated. Murmurs spread through the hall. Harry kept his eyes fixed on his plate. This inheritance, Dumbledore continued, temporarily affects Mr. Potter's magical aura and may cause heightened emotional responses in those around him. The staff is fully aware of the situation and is providing Mr. Potter with appropriate training to manage these developments. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled as he added, I assure you, this is a perfectly natural magical phenomenon and poses no danger to anyone. I would ask that you extend to Mr. Potter the courtesy of treating him as you always have, and respect that he is still learning to navigate these changes. With that, Dumbledore sat down, and conversation erupted across the hall. Harry risked a glance at the Slytherin table, where Malfoy looked furious at having his revelation preempted so neatly. That wasn't so bad, Ron offered, patting Harry's shoulder. Could have been worse, Harry agreed, though he noticed the curious, and in many cases, knowing, looks being cast his way. Hermione frowned. He never specified what type of inheritance. I wonder how many will make the connection to Veela. Does it matter now? Harry asked wearily. At least it's out in the open. For the next few days, Harry endured constant stares, questions, and in some cases, outright accusations of using his special powers intentionally. Professors stepped in when necessary, but largely allowed the natural rhythm of school life to gradually normalize the situation. By the following week, a new normal had established itself. Most students had either developed some resistance to Harry's aura or simply accepted it as another aspect of the already famous Harry Potter. His closest friends seemed almost entirely unaffected now, and even casual acquaintances showed diminishing susceptibility with regular exposure. There were still complications. Rita Skeeter attempted to sneak onto school grounds for an exclusive interview but was intercepted by Professor McGonagall, and Harry received several concerning letters from strangers that Dumbledore confiscated immediately. But overall, the controlled revelation had diffused much of the potential drama. You know, Hermione observed as they walked to Hagrid's hut one afternoon, this might actually work out better than we expected. Now that everyone knows, they're making an effort to see past it. Some are, Harry corrected, thinking of Malfoy's continued snide comments and Pansy Parkinson's deliberate attempts to sit near him in classes, despite clearly fighting the impulse. The point is, Ron added, you don't have to hide anymore. And the control techniques are working better now that you're not constantly stressed about keeping it secret. Harry had to admit they were right. His sessions with McGonagall had become more productive, and the pensive memories from Dumbledore continued to provide valuable insights. He could now direct his aura with reasonable precision, not perfect control, but significant improvement. As they approached Hagrid's hut, Harry noticed the gamekeeper working in his pumpkin patch. Buckbeak the hippogriff was tethered nearby, still the subject of Malfoy's complaint to the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures despite Hagrid's best efforts to defend him. An idea struck Harry, a memory from one of Dumbledore's pensive sessions, showing a male Veela calming an agitated magical creature. "Wait here," he told Ron and Hermione, approaching Buckbeak carefully. Following proper protocol, Harry bowed to the hippogriff, maintaining eye contact. When Buckbeak bowed in return, Harry moved closer, but instead of simply petting the creature as he had before, he tried something new. Concentrating on the techniques McGonagall had taught him, Harry focused his Veela aura, not to suppress it, but to direct it intentionally toward the hippogriff. He thought of calm, of safety, of mutual respect, and channeled those emotions through the silver warmth he could now sense flowing through his veins. Buckbeak's fierce yellow eyes locked on Harry's green ones. The hippogriff made a soft trilling sound, then to Harry's amazement, folded its legs and settled onto the ground in a gesture of complete relaxation, wings loosely folded at its sides. "Blimey," Hagrid breathed, having stopped his work to watch. "Never seen him do that with anyone before." "Harry, what did you do?" Hermione asked, approaching cautiously with Ron. "I tried using my aura to communicate with him," Harry explained, continuing to maintain the gentle flow of calming energy. "I remember seeing something similar in one of the memories Dumbledore showed me." Hagrid's beetle-black eyes widened with understanding. "Ah, so that's what Dumbledore meant about your inheritance. Veela blood, is it?" Harry nodded, surprised by Hagrid's quick deduction. "Makes sense," Hagrid said, stroking his beard. "Magical creatures recognize their own, in a manner of speaking. Veela magic works different on beasts than people, less about attraction, more about connection." "You know about Veela?" Ron asked. "Course I do," Hagrid replied, sounding almost offended. "Care of magical creatures professor, aren't I? Veela are classified as beings, not beasts, but the principles are similar." He watched as Buckbeak continued to rest peacefully under Harry's influence. "This could be useful for Beaky's defense, Harry. If you can demonstrate this connection at the hearing." "I'll do whatever I can to help," Harry promised, feeling a new sense of purpose in his previously unwanted abilities. That evening, as Harry practiced his meditation exercises before bed, he reflected on how much had changed in the months since his 13th birthday. What had begun as a confusing, unwelcome transformation had gradually revealed itself as something more complex, a part of his heritage that connected him to his father and grandfather, an ability that came with both burdens and opportunities. He still had much to learn about controlling his Veela traits, and the challenges wouldn't disappear overnight. But for the first time since the strange warm sensation had coursed through his veins on his birthday, Harry felt not just acceptance but the beginnings of appreciation for this unexpected inheritance. The silver fire that sometimes appeared in his dreams no longer seemed threatening, but rather like another form of magic to master, another thread connecting him to the magical world that had become his home. As he drifted toward sleep, Harry thought he heard distant singing, the same beautiful melody that had haunted his dreams since summer. But tonight, instead of mysterious and alien, it felt familiar, almost comforting. Like a part of himself he was only now beginning to understand. Chapter 2, Silver Fire. December arrived at Hogwarts with a flurry of snow and excitement about the approaching holidays. For Harry, the weeks following Dumbledore's announcement had settled into a new rhythm, one filled with continued training, curious stares, and the occasional burst of unwanted attention when his control slipped. The morning frost painted the windows of the Gryffindor boys' dormitory as Harry sat cross-legged on his bed, eyes closed in meditation. The other boys were still asleep, their gentle snores providing a steady backdrop to his concentration. This had become his daily ritual, 20 minutes each morning to center himself and establish control over his aura before facing the day. As he breathed steadily, Harry visualized his Veela aura as Professor McGonagall had taught him, a silver mist flowing through and around his body. He imagined drawing it inward, condensing it into a glowing core at his center rather than letting it radiate outward. The pendant against his chest warmed slightly, working in harmony with his mental efforts. Intention shapes magic, McGonagall had repeated in every lesson until the phrase echoed in Harry's dreams. Your aura responds to your will, but only if that will is focused and clear. When he opened his eyes 15 minutes later, Harry felt centered and in control. The silver fire that had once flowed through him unbidden now simmered just beneath the surface, responsive to his direction rather than wildly influential. Not perfect, never perfect, but manageable. Ron stirred in the neighboring bed. Time is it? He mumbled. Just after 6, Harry replied, reaching for his glasses. Go back to sleep. I'm going to shower before everyone's up. This too had become part of his routine, avoiding the communal rush to give himself space from the concentrated presence of others. Even with improved control, proximity to many people at once still strained his abilities. Under the hot water, Harry reflected on how much had changed in the weeks since Dumbledore's announcement. The initial storm of gossip had eventually subsided, replaced by a general acceptance of his condition. Most students had developed some degree of resistance through daily exposure, though certain individuals remained more susceptible than others. Ginny Weasley still couldn't manage a full conversation without blushing furiously. Lavender Brown and Parvati Patil had formed what Hermione scathingly called the Harry Potter Appreciation Society, documenting his daily activities with disturbing thoroughness. And most problematically, Colin Creevy's photography habit had intensified to the point where Professor McGonagall had been forced to confiscate his camera for a week. But there were unexpected positives as well. Harry's training sessions had expanded beyond McGonagall to include occasional guidance from Professors Flitwick and Lupin, each offering different perspectives on control techniques. Hagrid had begun teaching him about Veela interactions with magical creatures, knowledge that proved surprisingly practical during care of magical creatures lessons. And most importantly, Harry's closest friends, Ron, Hermione, the Weasley twins, and even Neville, had developed near-complete immunity to his influence, seeing him as simply Harry rather than the bearer of Veela charm. By the time Harry returned to the dormitory, the other boys were beginning to wake. Dean Thomas nodded sleepily as he passed, unaffected after months of sharing living space. The normality of the interaction made Harry smile. These small moments of being treated ordinarily had become precious. Hogsmeade weekend, Ron announced as they headed down to breakfast. Last one before Christmas. You sure you don't want us to stay back with you, Harry? Absolutely sure, Harry replied. Though he'd been disappointed to miss the previous visits, he'd come to appreciate the quieter castle on Hogsmeade weekends. Besides, I've got that session with Lupin this afternoon, more Patronus practice. Hermione joined them in the common room, her arms laden with books. I've been researching something interesting about Veela magic and patron uses, she announced without preamble. There's a historical correlation between Veela heritage and particularly powerful protective charms. Meaning? Ron asked through a yawn. Meaning Harry might have a natural advantage with the Patronus charm, if he can align his Veela aura with the protective intention of the spell. Harry considered this. Professor Lupin did mention something similar last time, that my innate protective nature might help channel positive emotions. Exactly. Hermione beamed. Veela magic is fundamentally emotional magic. If you can harness that. Their conversation continued as they made their way to the Great Hall, where the enchanted ceiling reflected a pristine winter sky. As they settled at the Gryffindor table, Harry performed another quick centering exercise, breakfast being one of the most challenging times with so many people in one space. Mails here, Ron announced as hundreds of owls swooped into the hall. Hedwig wasn't among them, but a handsome tawny owl landed beside Harry's toast, bearing a small package wrapped in silver paper. Before Harry could reach for it, Hermione snatched it away. Wait, she said firmly, drawing her wand to cast several detection charms. Remember what happened last week? Harry grimaced at the memory. A fifth-year Hufflepuff had sent him chocolates laced with a mild love potion, nothing dangerous, but embarrassing for everyone when Professor Snape had identified the tampering during a random security check of incoming packages. It's clean, Hermione announced, passing the package back. Though I still think you should be careful. Harry unwrapped it cautiously to find a small box containing a silver ring set with a dark blue stone. A note accompanied it in elegant, unfamiliar handwriting, to assist with control during emotional intensity. Wear when needed, not constantly. An old family remedy for your particular situation. A friend of your father's, that's suspicious, Ron said immediately. A mysterious gift from an anonymous person claiming to know your dad. With everything going on with Sirius Black. Hermione took the note, examining it closely. The handwriting doesn't match any of our professors, though it does seem somehow familiar. I'll show it to Professor Lupin this afternoon, Harry decided, pocketing the ring rather than wearing it. If it's legitimate, he might recognize who sent it. The Great Hall had filled while they talked, and Harry noticed Draco Malfoy watching him from the Slytherin table with his usual calculating expression. Since Dumbledore's announcement, Malfoy had shifted tactics, no longer mocking Harry for his heritage directly, but instead carefully documenting instances where Harry's aura affected others, as if building a case. Ignore him, Hermione advised, following Harry's gaze. He's just looking for ammunition. I know, Harry sighed. It's just, exhausting sometimes. Being watched constantly. Yeah, but you're handling it brilliantly, mate, Ron said supportively. Remember when Snape deliberately paired you with Pansy Parkinson in potions last week? You didn't even flinch. Harry allowed himself a small smile at the memory. Snape's obvious attempt to provoke a reaction, forcing him to work closely with someone particularly susceptible to his aura, had backfired when Harry maintained perfect control throughout the lesson. Speaking of potions, Hermione interjected, we should get going. Double period this morning, and you know how Snape gets if we're late. After a relatively uneventful potions class, Snape seemed to have temporarily abandoned his attempts to provoke Harry's aura. The trio parted ways at lunch. Ron and Hermione headed toward Hogsmeade while Harry made his way to the third floor for his Patronus lesson with Lupin. The defense against the dark arts classroom was warm and welcoming compared to the frigid corridors. Professor Lupin looked up from his desk as Harry entered, offering a tired smile. Though still gaunt, he appeared healthier than he had after the last full moon. Ah, Harry. Right on time. Lupin gestured to a large trunk positioned in the center of the cleared space. We'll continue with the Boggart Dementor today, but first, how are your control exercises progressing? Better, Harry replied, setting down his bag. The morning and evening meditations help a lot. Professor McGonagall says my directional focus has improved. Excellent. And any episodes this week? Harry had come to appreciate Lupin's direct but sensitive approach to discussing his Veela traits. Unlike McGonagall's strict formality or Dumbledore's occasional obliqueness, Lupin treated the situation as a practical challenge rather than a theoretical exercise. Just one, Harry admitted. During the Gryffindor vs. Ravenclaw practice match. When I spotted the snitch, I slipped. Cho Chang nearly flew into the stands. Lupin nodded understandingly. Competitive situations often trigger instinctive magical responses. Have you tried incorporating visualization techniques during flight? Not specifically for Quidditch, Harry said. I've been using McGonagall's general containment approach. I suspect a different strategy might serve you better for flying, Lupin suggested. Rather than containing your aura, try directing it into your connection with the broom itself. Veela magic has natural affinity with air elements. Harry filed this advice away for future practice. Oh, I almost forgot, he removed the small box from his pocket, explaining about the mysterious gift. The note said it was from a friend of my father's. Lupin took the ring, examining it with a puzzled expression that slowly shifted to recognition, then something more complex, almost pained. Do you know who sent it? Harry asked eagerly. I have suspicions, Lupin said carefully, returning the ring to Harry. This stone is azurite, known for its properties of emotional clarity and control. The setting is goblin silver, which responds to the wearer's magical signature. He paused. It's a legitimate magical artifact, Harry, not dark in nature. But I would advise caution nonetheless. But who do you think sent it? Lupin seemed to struggle internally before answering. There were very few people who knew the details of your father's heritage. Professor McGonagall, of course. Dumbledore. Your mother. Peter Pettigrew. And Sirius Black. A chill ran through Harry at the mention of the escaped prisoner. You think Black sent this? Why would he? I don't know, Lupin admitted. If it was him, it's perplexing. Such a gift doesn't align with the actions of a man intent on harming you. Unless it's cursed in some way you can't detect, Harry suggested darkly. Possible, though unlikely. This particular type of ring is actually rather well known among certain old families as an aid for those with Veela blood. Your grandfather owned something similar. Lupin's expression remained troubled. You should show it to Professor Dumbledore before using it. I will, Harry promised, tucking the box away. Should we start with the Patronus practice? Lupin seemed relieved by the change of subject. Yes, let's. Remember, focus on your happiest memory, and the incantation, Expecto Patronum. As in previous sessions, Lupin released the boggart, which immediately transformed into a towering Dementor. The familiar cold swept through the room, and Harry raised his wand, concentrating on the memory of winning the Quidditch Cup in his imagination. Expecto Patronum, he shouted. A silver mist burst from his wand, stronger than his previous attempts, but still not a corporeal Patronus. The boggart Dementor faltered but continued advancing. Harry heard the distant echo of his mother's screams beginning at the edges of his consciousness. Again, Harry. Lupin encouraged. Harry tried to focus, but the cold was intensifying, the screaming growing louder. Suddenly, he felt the warm surge of his Veela aura responding to his distress, rising up as if to defend him. Instead of fighting it as he normally would, Harry remembered Hermione's research and Lupin's advice about alignment. Acting on instinct, he channeled the silver warmth flowing through his veins into the spell, merging his Veela magic with the protective intention of the Patronus charm. Expecto Patronum. A brilliant silver stag erupted from his wand, so bright that both Harry and Lupin had to shield their eyes. The Patronus charged the boggart Dementor, driving it back into the trunk, which Lupin quickly sealed. Remarkable! Lupin exclaimed, his face alight with excitement despite his exhaustion. A fully corporeal Patronus on your third lesson, that's extraordinary, Harry. Harry stared at the fading silver stag in amazement. I felt different that time. I used the Veela energy instead of fighting it. Precisely what I hoped might happen, Lupin said, passing Harry a chocolate frog. Your father discovered something similar during our school days. When he stopped treating his Veela traits as separate from his wizarding magic and instead integrated them, his spell work improved dramatically in certain areas, particularly protective magic. As Harry savored the chocolate, warming his system after the Dementor's chill, Lupin continued more thoughtfully. The stag is interesting. It was your father's animagus form, you know. My father was an animagus? Harry asked, surprised. Yes, though unregistered, Lupin confirmed with a hint of reminiscence. He, Sirius, and Peter all became animagi during our school years. James was a stag, Sirius a large black dog, and Peter a rat. Why would they do that? Isn't it incredibly difficult? Lupin seemed to catch himself, as if he'd said more than intended. They had their reasons. Perhaps a story for another time. He checked his watch. We should end here today. That was excellent progress, Harry. As Harry gathered his things, a question that had been bothering him resurfaced. Professor, when Dementors get near me, why do I hear my mother dying? Does that have something to do with my Veela heritage too? Lupin's expression softened with compassion. No, Harry. Dementors force us to relive our worst memories. That you hear, Lily. It means your worst memory is the night your parents died, even though you were only a baby. It's not related to your Veela blood, though your heritage may intensify your reactions to emotional triggers like Dementors. He placed a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. Your sensitivity, to others' emotions, to your own past, may be heightened by your Veela nature, but it's also simply part of who you are, Harry. James had it too, beneath all his bravado. Harry nodded, oddly comforted. Thank you, Professor. Before you go, Lupin added, one more piece of advice about that ring. If you do decide to use it after Dumbledore examines it, be aware that emotional suppressants can be double-edged. They may help control unwanted manifestations, but they can also dull the positive emotional connections that make your magic powerful. Use it selectively. The castle was peaceful with most students in Hogsmeade. Harry made his way to the Ollery, where he'd arranged to meet Hagrid to continue their work with magical creatures. Since discovering Harry's effect on Buckbeak, Hagrid had enthusiastically embraced the possibility of using this connection to help the Hippogriff's case. The committees set the hearing for April, Hagrid explained as they walked toward his hut, their breath fogging in the cold air. But we need to practice before then. Show how Beaky responds to ya. Buckbeak was tethered near Hagrid's pumpkin patch, feathers ruffled against the winter chill. The moment the Hippogriff spotted Harry, he stretched his wings and made the trilling sound that had become his particular greeting. See that? Hagrid beamed. Remembers, yeah, he does. Following the proper protocol of bowing first, Harry approached Buckbeak, focusing on directing his aura in the way he'd been practicing. He discovered that magical creatures responded to different emotional projections. Buckbeak responded best to respect and admiration, while the Nifflers Hagrid had shown him last week preferred playfulness and curiosity. Today we're gonna try something more challenging, Hagrid said, watching as Buckbeak bent his scaly knees in greeting. I want ye to see if ye can calm him when he's agitated. Committee's likely to provoke him deliberately during the hearing, see. How do we agitate him safely? Harry asked, stroking Buckbeak's feathery neck. Got these, Hagrid replied, reaching into his moleskin coat to produce a ferret, dead, but still giving off a strong odor. Hippogriffs are territorial about their food. I'll toss this near him, then ye step in when he gets possessive. The experiment proceeded as Hagrid predicted. When he threw the ferret at Buckbeak's feet, the hippogriff immediately became alert and defensive, spreading his wings and clacking his beak warningly at Hagrid when he stepped forward. Now, Harry, Hagrid instructed, stepping back. Nice and easy. Harry approached slowly, maintaining eye contact with Buckbeak. Instead of suppressing his aura as he did around students, he deliberately channeled it, focusing on feelings of calm and safety. He visualized the silver mist flowing from his eyes to Buckbeak's, creating a connection between them. That's it, he murmured, reaching out his hand. No one's taking your food. You're safe. For a tense moment, Buckbeak remained defensive. Then, gradually, his wings lowered, and his posture relaxed. When Harry was within arm's reach, the hippogriff surprised both him and Hagrid by gently nudging the ferret toward Harry with his beak, an extraordinary gesture of trust. Merlin's beard, Hagrid whispered, his eyes shining. That's something special, Harry. Never seen a hippogriff share food willingly. Harry felt a surge of something like pride, but pure, a sense of connection rather than accomplishment. This wasn't manipulation or control, it was communication, a bridge between different magical beings. Can we try with other creatures? Harry asked eagerly. Before the hearing, I mean. Definitely, Hagrid nodded enthusiastically. The more examples we have, the stronger our case. Maybe next time we can try with, a distant scream cut through their conversation. Harry and Hagrid turned toward the castle, where a small figure was running across the grounds toward them, a girl with flaming red hair. Ginny! Harry called, recognizing Ron's sister as she approached. Ginny Weasley arrived breathless, her face pale despite her run. Harry, Hagrid, come quick. In the castle, there's been another attack. Attack? Hagrid demanded. What do ya mean? Not another petrification. No, Ginny gasped, pointing back toward the school. Sirius Black. He's been in the castle, tried to get into Gryffindor Tower. Slashed the fat lady's portrait when she wouldn't let him in without the password. Harry felt his blood run cold. Is everyone all right? Was anyone hurt? No one was there, everyone's in Hogsmeade, remember? Except me, I was in the library. Ginny's eyes were wide with fear. Professors are searching the castle now. Dumbledore sent me to find you both, said to bring you back immediately. Hagrid secured Buckbeak quickly. Let's go. Stay close, both of ya. As they hurried back toward the castle, Harry's mind raced. Black had been in Hogwarts, had tried to enter Gryffindor Tower specifically. Where Harry slept. The coincidence of the attack happening on a Hogsmeade weekend when most students were away seemed too convenient. Did anyone actually see Black? Harry asked as they approached the main entrance. Ginny shook her head. Just the fat lady. She's hiding in another painting now, terrified. She said he got angry when she wouldn't let him in without the password. The castle was in controlled chaos, with professors and prefects directing students returning from Hogsmeade to the Great Hall. Professor McGonagall intercepted Harry's group at the entrance. Potter, there you are. The headmaster wants all students in the Great Hall immediately. We're conducting a thorough search of the castle. Her stern expression softened slightly. Your friends are already inside, quite concerned about you. The Great Hall had been cleared of tables, replaced with hundreds of purple sleeping bags. Students clustered in groups, speculation running wild about Black's break-in. Harry quickly found Ron and Hermione, who rushed to meet him. Harry! We were so worried. Hermione exclaimed, hugging him tightly. When we got back and heard what happened, and you weren't with the other students, I'm fine, Harry assured her. I was with Hagrid. Ron looked grim. You know Black was trying to get to you, right? Gryffindor Tower, on a day when most people are out, he must have thought you'd be alone in the dormitory. But how would he even know Harry sleeps there? Hermione whispered, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. Or that today was a Hogsmeade weekend. Someone must be helping him. Harry suddenly remembered the silver ring. Maybe he knows more about me than we thought. He told them about the mysterious gift and Lupin's reaction. What if Black sent it as some kind of, I don't know, apology? Or trick? That's mental, Ron declared. Why would a murderous escaped convict send you jewelry? We should tell Dumbledore about the ring immediately, Hermione insisted. If there's any connection. Their conversation was interrupted as Percy Weasley approached, puffed up with the importance of his head boy duties. Lights out in 10 minutes. Find a sleeping bag and settle down. They reluctantly obeyed, claiming 3 purple sleeping bags in a corner. As the lights dimmed and whispered conversations continued around them, Harry found himself staring at the enchanted ceiling, where stars twinkled against a velvety black sky. Black had been here, in the castle, seeking him out. And possibly sending him gifts related to his Veela heritage. None of it made sense. If Black wanted to kill Harry, why send him a ring to help control his abilities? And if he didn't want to kill Harry, then what did he want? The fallout from Black's intrusion rippled through the following weeks. Security tightened further, with professors escorting students between classes and Filch boarding up every conceivable entrance to the castle. Sir Cadogan, the eccentric knight from a painting on the 7th floor, replaced the traumatized fat lady as Gryffindor's guardian, changing the password so frequently that even Neville's written list couldn't keep up. Through it all, Harry continued his training, now with added urgency. If he might face Black at any moment, controlling his abilities became not just a social necessity but potentially a matter of survival. Emotional control under stress is the ultimate test, McGonagall told him during their next session. We must prepare for the possibility that Black may attempt to use your heritage against you. How would he even know about it? Harry asked, frustrated. Unless he really did send that ring. Sirius Black was your father's closest friend, McGonagall replied, her expression grave. He knew James better than anyone, including the details of the Potter family history. He may well know more about your potential abilities than you do yourself. This troubling thought stayed with Harry as December deepened. The ring, after being thoroughly examined by both Dumbledore and Flitwick, had been deemed safe, a genuine artifact designed to help those with Veela blood manage emotional spikes. Harry had begun wearing it during Quidditch practice and other high-stress situations, finding that it indeed helped maintain his control, though at the cost of a certain emotional distance that left him feeling oddly detached. As the end of term approached and the castle was decorated for Christmas, a new complication arose. Professor McGonagall circulated with the sign-up sheet for students staying over the holidays, and Harry found himself facing an unexpected dilemma. You should go to the Burrow with Ron, Hermione advised as they discussed options in the common room. The Weasleys invited you, and it would be safer than staying here with Black on the loose. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Harry said hesitantly. My control is better, but being in a small house with Ginny for 2 weeks. He trailed off uncomfortably. Ron grimaced. Yeah, she's still pretty affected, isn't she? Even with all your containment efforts. It's not her fault, Hermione said fairly. Some people are naturally more susceptible. And Ginny's had that crush on Harry since before his Veela traits activated, which probably makes her more vulnerable. Exactly, Harry sighed. I don't want to ruin everyone's Christmas by making things awkward. Better if I stay here where there's more space. But you can't stay alone with Black trying to break in. Ron protested. I won't be alone. Dumbledore and most of the professors stay over holidays. Harry ran a hand through his hair, a habit that had increased with his stress levels. Besides, I can use the time to practice without worrying about classes. After much debate, they reached a compromise. Harry would stay at Hogwarts until Christmas Day, then join the Weasleys at the Burrow for the remainder of the holiday, giving him time for both focused practice and a proper family Christmas. Mrs. Weasley, informed of the plan and the reason behind it, sent a warm letter assuring Harry that he was welcome whenever he felt comfortable joining them. The final Hogsmeade weekend before holidays arrived with fresh snow blanketing the grounds. Once again, Harry watched his friends depart for the village, this time with specific instructions to bring back Christmas gifts for everyone since he couldn't shop himself. Left to his own devices, Harry decided to explore the castle using the Marauder's map. The magical document, gifted to him by Fred and George, showed every corridor, secret passage, and person within Hogwarts, a resource too valuable to ignore. Wandering the quiet corridors, Harry studied the map, noting the few remaining students scattered throughout the castle. Most professors were either in their offices or had joined the Hogsmeade supervision, leaving the hallways largely deserted. A movement on the map caught Harry's attention, a dot labeled Peter Pettigrew moving along a third-floor corridor. The name meant nothing to Harry at first, until he remembered Lupin's words: James was a stag, Sirius a large black dog, and Peter a rat. Pettigrew had been one of his father's friends, the one supposedly murdered by Sirius Black. But if Pettigrew was dead, how could he be in the castle? Curiosity piqued, Harry hurried toward the third floor, but by the time he arrived, the corridor was empty. The map still showed Pettigrew, now moving rapidly down a staircase toward the grounds. Harry followed, but lost the trail near the entrance hall when Professor Snape appeared suddenly around a corner. Potter, Snape said silkily. Wandering the corridors alone. Unwise, with Black at large. Harry hastily folded the map, murmuring, mischief managed, to blank its contents. I was just exploring, sir. Since I can't go to Hogsmeade. Snape's dark eyes narrowed. What is that in your hand? Just some parchment, Harry said, trying to sound casual. Show me. Snape held out his hand imperiously. Reluctantly, Harry surrendered the now blank map. Snape examined it, then touched his wand to the parchment. "Reveal your secrets," he commanded. To Harry's horror, words began to appear on the parchment, but not the map. Instead, mocking messages formed in different handwriting styles. Mr. Mooney presents his compliments to Professor Snape, and begs him to keep his abnormally large nose out of other people's business. Mr. Prongs agrees with Mr. Mooney, and would like to add that Professor Snape is an ugly git. Mr. Padfoot would like to register his astonishment that an idiot like that ever became a professor. Mr. Wormtail bids Professor Snape good day, and advises him to wash his hair, the greasy bat. Snape's face grew paler with fury as the insults appeared. Before he could respond, another voice joined them. "Ah, Severus, there you are." Professor Lupin approached, his eyebrows rising slightly at the scene. "Is everything all right?" "I have just confiscated a curious artifact from Potter," Snape said, his voice dangerously soft. "A parchment that appears to insult anyone who attempts to read it." Lupin glanced at the map, and Harry saw a flash of recognition in his eyes before his expression became carefully neutral. "May I see it? I have some experience with such objects." Reluctantly, Snape handed over the parchment. Lupin examined it with well-feigned curiosity. "Interesting, looks like a Zonko's product to me. Probably harmless, but I'll confiscate it just in case. Thank you for bringing it to my attention, Severus." He turned to Harry. "Harry, please come with me. We need to discuss your essay on hinkypunks." Harry followed Lupin gratefully, leaving a seething Snape behind. Once safely in Lupin's office, the professor closed the door and gave Harry a serious look. "I don't want to know how you got this," he said, holding up the map. "But I am astounded that you didn't turn it in. Especially after what happened with the last object belonging to your father that found its way into your hands." Harry flushed with guilt. "You know what it is." "Of course I know what it is." Lupin sighed, setting the map on his desk. "I helped write it. I'm Mooney." Harry's eyes widened. "You're?" Then the others. James was Prongs, as you might have guessed from his animagus form. Sirius was Padfoot. Peter was Wormtail. Lupin's expression turned grave. "Harry, this map, while ingenious, is dangerous in the current climate. It doesn't always show everything. And some of its creators have proven untrustworthy." A thought suddenly struck Harry. "Professor, the map shows everyone in the castle, doesn't it? Even if they're disguised or invisible." "Generally, yes. Why do you ask?" Harry hesitated, then decided to trust Lupin. "Just before I ran into Snape, I saw a name on the map. Peter Pettigrew." Lupin went very still. "That's impossible." "I saw it clearly," Harry insisted. "The dot was moving through the third floor, then down toward the grounds." "Harry," Lupin said, his voice strained, "Peter Pettigrew is dead. Has been for 12 years. Killed by Sirius Black." "Then why would the map show him?" "I don't know," Lupin admitted, looking troubled. "The map can be misleading. Perhaps a flaw we never fixed." He seemed to be speaking more to himself than to Harry. "Or perhaps he's not as dead as everyone thinks," Harry suggested boldly. Lupin's head snapped up, his eyes sharp. "That's a dangerous speculation, Harry. Very dangerous indeed." He picked up the map, folding it carefully. "I'll be keeping this, for your own safety. And I must ask you not to spread theories about Peter Pettigrew being alive. There are complexities you don't understand." "But, please, Harry," Lupin said, his voice suddenly tired. "Trust me when I say this is more complicated than it appears. If I learn anything relevant, I promise I'll share it with you." Recognizing the finality in Lupin's tone, Harry reluctantly nodded. As he turned to leave, another question occurred to him. "Professor, did you know about the ring? Before I showed it to you, I mean." Lupin paused before answering. I recognized it, yes. It belonged to your father in our school days. A gift from your grandfather when James's Veela traits began manifesting. And how did Sirius Black get it? Harry pressed. James gave it to him for safekeeping before going into hiding, Lupin said softly. He said he didn't need it anymore, that having you and Lily in his life gave him all the emotional balance he required. The implication hung in the air between them. If the ring had indeed come from Black, it meant the escaped prisoner still possessed a treasured item from Harry's father, and had chosen to return it to Harry rather than destroy it. Nothing about Sirius Black made sense anymore. The first day of holidays arrived, bringing with it a fresh blanket of snow and a welcome sense of peace to the castle. With only a handful of students remaining, Harry found himself enjoying the rare luxury of near solitude. Even his aura seemed to settle in the emptier environment, requiring less conscious control. He spent the morning practicing Quidditch maneuvers on his new firebolt, an anonymous Christmas gift that had arrived with the morning mail, causing both excitement and suspicion. Hermione, convinced it must be from Sirius Black, had insisted Professor McGonagall examine it before Harry flew on it. Better safe than sorry, she'd said firmly as McGonagall carried the magnificent broom away for testing. Even if it means waiting a few days. But McGonagall had returned it that very evening, declaring it free from jinxes or curses, though she too seemed puzzled by its mysterious origin. Now, as Harry soared through the crisp winter air, he couldn't help wondering, first the ring, now the most expensive racing broom in existence. If Black was sending these gifts, what game was he playing? The firebolt responded to his slightest touch, almost seeming to anticipate his intentions. Following Lupin's advice about directing his Veela aura into his connection with the broom, Harry experimented with consciously channeling a thin stream of his silver energy into the handle. The result was extraordinary, a harmony between rider and broom that felt like an extension of himself. That's quite impressive flying, Potter. Harry nearly fell off his broom at the unexpected voice. Looking down, he spotted Professor McGonagall standing at the edge of the pitch, wrapped in a tartan cloak against the cold. He descended quickly, landing beside her. Professor. I didn't see you there. Clearly, she said, though without her usual sternness. I came to inform you that the headmaster wishes to see you before lunch. The password is, Peppermint Toad. Is something wrong? Harry asked, suddenly anxious. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. Nothing to worry about. He merely wishes to discuss your progress before you depart for the Weasleys tomorrow. Relieved, Harry thanked her and headed back to the castle after storing his precious firebolt. The corridors were quiet, decorated with evergreen garlands and enchanted snow that fell from the ceiling but vanished before reaching the floor. Dumbledore's office was equally festive, with tiny golden bells chiming softly from the many whirring silver instruments, and Fawkes the Phoenix sporting particularly vibrant plumage. Ah, Harry, Dumbledore greeted him warmly. Thank you for coming. Lemon drop? They're infused with peppermint for the season. Harry accepted one politely, taking the offered seat across from Dumbledore's desk. Professor McGonagall said you wanted to see me, sir. Indeed. Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled over his half-moon spectacles. I wanted to discuss your progress before the holidays. Professor McGonagall tells me you've made remarkable strides in controlling your aura. It's getting easier, Harry acknowledged. The meditation helps, and the ring too, when I need extra control. Excellent. And you've found practical applications for your abilities as well. Your work with Hagrid's creatures is particularly impressive. Harry felt a flush of pride. It feels right, somehow. Not like I'm trying to influence them, but like we're communicating on a level that was always there but I couldn't access before. A perceptive observation, Dumbledore nodded approvingly. The truest magic never feels like control or manipulation, but rather like discovering a connection that always existed. He steepled his fingers thoughtfully. Which brings me to the second purpose of our meeting. I believe you are ready to advance to the next stage of understanding your heritage. Sir. Dumbledore rose, moving to a cabinet behind his desk. From it, he retrieved a weathered leather book bound with silver clasps. "This," he said, returning to his seat, "is the Potter family grimoire. Or more specifically, the portion dealing with your Veela ancestry. It was entrusted to me by your parents for safekeeping." Harry stared at the book with a mixture of awe and hunger. A direct connection to his family, containing knowledge specifically about the heritage he was struggling to understand. "I had intended to wait until summer to share this with you," Dumbledore continued. "But recent events have convinced me that earlier access would be beneficial. The grimoire contains personal accounts from your ancestors who carried the Veela bloodline, along with techniques and insights developed over generations." He placed the book on the desk between them. "It is yours by right, Harry. However, I must caution you, some of the knowledge within is sensitive. Not dark, but powerful in ways that require discretion." "I understand, sir," Harry said earnestly. "I believe you do." Dumbledore smiled. "You may take it with you to the Burrow. I've spoken with Arthur and Molly, they understand the nature of the book and the privacy you may require while studying it." As Harry reached for the grimoire, his fingers tingled upon contact with the leather binding. The silver clasps, which he had expected to require a key, sprung open at his touch. "Blood recognition," Dumbledore explained. "The book will open only for those of Potter lineage with active Veela traits." Harry carefully opened the cover to find handwritten text in various styles, some pages centuries old judging by the faded ink and archaic script. The frontispiece bore an elegant inscription, "For those who carry the silver fire in their veins. May you find balance between two natures, and strength in both." "Thank you," Harry said quietly, overwhelmed by this connection to his ancestors. "This means everything." Dumbledore's expression was gentle. "Your father would be proud of how you've handled this challenge, Harry. James struggled with his heritage as well, though in different ways and to a lesser degree. He found his balance eventually, as will you." As Harry left Dumbledore's office with the precious grimoire tucked safely in his bag, he felt a new sense of purpose. The book represented not just knowledge, but belonging, proof that he wasn't facing this alone, that others in his family had walked this path before him. Christmas at the Burrow was exactly what Harry needed: warmth, laughter, and the chaotic affection of the Weasley family. Despite his initial concerns, his time there proved less complicated than feared. Ginny, though still occasionally flustered in his presence, seemed to have developed more resistance to his aura, able to maintain conversations without blushing furiously or dropping things. "She's been practicing," Ron explained in a whisper as they watched Ginny confidently pass Harry the potatoes at Christmas dinner. "Asked Bill for tips on mental focus when he visited last month. Been meditating every night, according to Fred and George." Harry felt a surge of admiration for her determination. "That's brilliant of her." "Yeah, well," Ron shrugged, though he looked proud of his sister. "Weasleys are stubborn that way." The holidays passed in a blur of snowball fights, wizard chess tournaments, and Mrs. Weasley's delicious cooking. Each night, Harry found time to read from the grimoire, absorbing the experiences and advice of his ancestors. Hardwin Potter, who had married the half-Veela Iolanthe 7 generations back, described his wife's early struggles to be accepted by magical society and their joint efforts to create a life where both her human and Veela natures could exist in harmony. Fleamont Potter, Harry's grandfather, wrote extensively about the business advantages his subtle Veela charm had provided, while emphasizing the ethical boundaries he had established for himself. "Influence without manipulation, connection without control, this is the way of honor for those with our gift," he advised. Most valuable were the entries from James Potter himself, beginning in his 3rd year at Hogwarts when his traits first emerged and continuing until shortly before Harry's birth. His early entries showed frustration and occasional resentment similar to Harry's own feelings. October 15, 1973. McGonagall pulled me aside today after Transfiguration. Said I need to learn control before half the girls in Gryffindor make fools of themselves. Easy for her to say. I didn't ask for this. Sirius thinks it's hilarious, of course. Peter just seems envious. Only Remus actually understands it's more burden than blessing. But as the entries continued through his school years, James's perspective evolved. April 3, 1976 breakthrough today. Instead of suppressing the aura constantly, exhausting, I've found I can direct it like a wand current. Sirius suggested thinking of it as a radio dial rather than an on-off switch. Brilliant analogy, I can tune it up or down as needed. Used it during Quidditch practice to enhance my broom connection rather than affect other players. Result, best flying of my life. And most poignantly, an entry about Lily, December 25, 1977. Lily kissed me today. A real kiss, not just a peck on the cheek. Afterwards, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "That wasn't because of your Veela charm, Potter. That was entirely you. Best Christmas gift possible." She sees me, not the aura. For the first time, I'm grateful for this heritage. It's shown me who truly cares for the person beneath the influence. Reading his father's words brought James to life in ways that stories and photos never had. Harry could feel the evolution of his father's relationship with his heritage, from resistance to acceptance to gratitude, mirroring his own journey. On his final night at the Burrow, Harry sat by the window in Ron's room, the grimoire open in his lap. Outside, snow fell gently, coating the garden in pristine white. Ron was downstairs playing chess with Bill, giving Harry a rare moment of privacy. He turned to the last entry in James's handwriting, dated just weeks before Harry's birth, July 10, 1981. Our son will be born any day now. Lily is radiant, though exhausted. We've discussed the possibility of the Veela blood passing to our child. Dumbledore believes it unlikely to manifest strongly, too diluted after so many generations. But if it does, we'll be ready. I've compiled everything I've learned, every technique that helped. The silver ring from Father is ready if needed. More importantly, we'll make sure he knows that this heritage is neither curse nor blessing on its own, merely a different kind of magic to be understood and respected. Like all power, its value lies in how it's used, not in its mere possession. Sirius has already volunteered to mentor any young Veela tendencies, as if he's an expert. Though I must admit, having watched me navigate it all these years, he probably understands it better than most. He's promised to be there for our son, whatever comes. I hope, if our child does inherit these traits, that he finds what I've found, people who see beyond the silver fire to the person within. That's the true gift, not the Veela magic, but the clarity it brings about who really matters in your life. Harry closed the book gently, tears prickling behind his eyes. His father's words resonated deeply, offering both guidance and connection across the years that separated them. For the first time since his birthday, Harry felt truly at peace with his inheritance, seeing it not as an alien imposition but as a thread connecting him to a family he had never known. As he packed the grimoire carefully for the return to Hogwarts, Harry made a silent promise to himself and to his father's memory. He would stop fighting his Veela nature and instead learn to integrate it fully into his identity, using it with the same ethical care and creativity that had guided his ancestors. The silver fire was part of him now, neither defining him completely nor something to be constantly suppressed, but simply another facet of his magical self. January arrived with renewed vigor to Harry's training. Inspired by the grimoire's insights, he approached his abilities with fresh perspective and determination. Rather than McGonagall's containment focus or Lupin's directional technique alone, Harry began synthesizing approaches, developing a more intuitive relationship with his Veela aura. "You seem different," Hermione observed one evening in the common room, looking up from her arithmancy homework. "More settled, somehow." Harry nodded, realizing she was right. The grimoire helped. Reading about my father and grandfather, how they managed, how they eventually saw it as just another part of themselves, it changed my perspective. "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working," Ron commented. "Lavender actually managed a full potions class without staring at you yesterday. Miracle of miracles." "It's not just my control that's better," Harry explained. People are developing more resistance too. Exposure builds immunity, like Snape said. Not everything improved so smoothly, however. Harry's Patronus lessons with Lupin continued to advance, but their discussions about Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew had reached an impasse. Lupin refused to elaborate on his reaction to seeing Pettigrew's name on the map, and Harry, respecting his professor's obvious distress around the topic, had stopped pressing. The confiscated Marauders map remained with Lupin, though Harry occasionally wondered whether the professor was using it himself to search for the supposedly dead Pettigrew. January's other major development was Harry's first Quidditch match on his new Firebolt, Gryffindor vs Ravenclaw. After weeks of practice implementing the techniques from the grimoire, Harry felt confident in his ability to maintain control even during the excitement of competition. The morning of the match dawned clear and cold. At breakfast, Harry wore his silver ring as a precaution, though he'd found he needed it less frequently as his natural control improved. The great hall buzzed with anticipation, with students from all houses eager to see the famous Firebolt in action. "Remember the strategy we discussed," Hermione said as Harry prepared to leave for the changing rooms. "Channel your aura into your connection with the broom instead of broadcasting it. And wear the pendant too," Ron added. "Belt and braces, mate." Harry nodded, touching the silver chain around his neck. With both the pendant and ring, plus his improved control, he felt prepared for the challenge ahead. The atmosphere in the changing rooms was electric with excitement. Wood gave his usual passionate pre-match speech, focusing particularly on Harry. "Remember, Harry, Chang's good, but she's on a Comet 260. No match for your Firebolt. Just keep your focus on the snitch and away from." Wood hesitated, clearly searching for a delicate way to reference Harry's Veela issue. "I know," Harry assured him. "I've been practicing specific techniques for match conditions. It won't be a problem." Wood looked relieved. "Good man. Let's go show them what Gryffindor's made of." The teams walked onto the pitch to thunderous applause. Across the field, Harry spotted Cho Chang, the Ravenclaw seeker, a pretty girl with long black hair who smiled nervously at him. He returned the smile politely while mentally reinforcing his aura control. As Madame Hooch blew her whistle and 14 players kicked off into the air, Harry felt the familiar rush of exhilaration. The firebolt shot upward like a rocket, the wind whistling past his ears. Instead of fighting the surge of excitement, he channeled it as he'd practiced, directing his Veela energy into his connection with the broom rather than letting it radiate outward. The result was spectacular. The firebolt, already the finest racing broom in production, seemed to become an extension of Harry's body, responding to his thoughts almost before he could form them. He executed turns and dives that drew gasps from the crowd, while maintaining complete control over his aura. Lee Jordan's commentary reflected the crowd's amazement, and Potter performs another incredible sloth grip roll to avoid that bludger. "The control he's showing on that firebolt is unlike anything I've seen, it's as if broom and rider are one entity." The match proceeded intensely, with Gryffindor gradually building a lead despite Ravenclaw's well-coordinated chaser plays. Harry divided his attention between searching for the snitch and keeping tabs on Cho Chang, who had adopted the strategy of marking him closely rather than searching independently. 70 minutes into the match, with Gryffindor leading 80-30, Harry spotted the snitch hovering near the Ravenclaw goalposts. He immediately accelerated, but Cho, reading his movement, cut across his path. "Sorry, Harry," she called, smiling apologetically. The close proximity and her direct engagement triggered a momentary slip in Harry's concentration. He felt his aura flare, not dramatically, but enough that Cho's flight pattern wavered as she briefly lost focus. Horrified at the near repeat of the practice match incident, Harry instantly redirected his energy, pulling his aura back sharply. The correction worked, but the moment of distraction cost him, the snitch had vanished again. "Keep it together," Harry muttered to himself, circling higher to resume his search. 20 minutes later, the score stood at 100-50 to Gryffindor when Harry spotted the snitch again, this time fluttering just above the grass at midfield. He dove immediately, the firebolt responding with phenomenal speed. Cho followed, but her comet was no match for the firebolt's acceleration. As Harry closed in on the snitch, however, he became aware of an unnatural chill spreading across the pitch. The familiar, terrible cold of Dementors. Looking down, he saw 3 tall, hooded figures gliding onto the field, faces hidden, black robes billowing. Not again, Harry thought desperately, remembering his fall during the Hufflepuff match. But this time, instead of panic, he felt a surge of determination. He'd been practicing the Patronus charm for weeks. He had control of his Veela aura. He wouldn't let the Dementors ruin another match. Without slowing his dive, Harry drew his wand with his free hand. Focusing on the joy of flight, the happiness of connection with his father through the grimoire, he channeled both his wizard magic and Veela energy into the spell. Expecto Patronum. The silver stag erupted from his wand with extraordinary brilliance, charging directly at the hooded figures while Harry continued his pursuit of the snitch. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the Dementors stumble and fall in a tangled heap of robes. With a final burst of speed, Harry closed his fingers around the snitch, pulling out of the dive mere feet above the ground. The stadium erupted in cheers as Madame Hooch's whistle signaled the end of the match. Harry landed amid a sea of crimson as his teammates descended upon him in celebration. Over the tumult, he heard Professor McGonagall's magically amplified voice, an absolutely disgraceful attempt to sabotage the Gryffindor Seeker. Detention for all of you, Malfoy, Crabbe, Goyle, and Nott. Turning in confusion, Harry realized what had happened. The Dementors had been Slytherins on stilts, draped in black robes, now thoroughly tangled by his Patronus charm. Did you see their faces? Ron howled with laughter as the team carried Harry toward the changing rooms. When your Patronus charged them, I thought Malfoy was going to wet himself. That was the most powerful Patronus I've ever seen from a student, Professor Lupin said, appearing beside them with a proud smile. Especially while continuing a Wronski feint. Extraordinary coordination, Harry. The control was the impressive part, Angelina Johnson added, giving Harry a knowing look. No distractions, even with all that adrenaline. Harry felt a wave of gratification. He had maintained his focus despite the match intensity, the interference, and the perceived Dementor threat. More importantly, he'd successfully integrated his Veela abilities with his wizard magic instead of treating them as separate powers to be managed independently. The celebration continued in the Gryffindor common room well into the evening. Harry noticed with satisfaction that even those students who had previously been most affected by his aura, Lavender, Parvati, even Ginny, interacted with him normally amid the festivities. As the party began to wind down, Hermione appeared at Harry's side, holding a butterbeer and wearing an expression of analytical curiosity. You did something different out there, she observed. With your aura. Harry nodded. I stopped thinking of it as something to contain and started treating it as just another magical current to direct. Like the grimoire suggested. That's what I thought, Hermione said, looking pleased. The energy flow was visible when you cast your Patronus, silver with gold flecks, rather than pure silver. I've been reading about magical integration techniques, and this is exactly what the theoretical models predict for successfully merged magical currents. It felt right, Harry said simply. Like finding the proper wand movement for a spell after practicing it wrong. Later that night, as Harry lay in bed listening to his teammates' satisfied snores, he reflected on the match. Beyond the victory and the successful control, what stayed with him was the seamless integration he'd achieved, the moment when his wizard magic and Veela abilities had worked in perfect harmony rather than opposition. It felt like a turning point, not the end of his journey with his heritage, but perhaps the beginning of truly understanding it. February brought heavy rains and the next phase of Harry's education. With his basic control now reliable, Professor McGonagall suggested advancing to more nuanced applications of his abilities. Mere suppression or basic direction is only the foundation, she explained during one of their sessions. A truly accomplished practitioner learns to modulate their aura for specific purposes, like a pianist who can play both fortissimo and pianissimo with equal skill. Under her guidance, Harry began practicing selective projection, allowing his aura to affect certain individuals while excluding others in the same space. It was delicate work, requiring intense concentration and precision. Imagine your aura as light passing through a pattern screen, McGonagall instructed. You can shape the pattern to create the effect you desire. Harry's progress was inconsistent at first. During one practice session with volunteer students, supervised closely by both McGonagall and Flitwick, he successfully projected his aura toward a fifth-year Hufflepuff while excluding the Ravenclaw beside her, only to have his control slip moments later, affecting everyone in the room. Patience, Potter, McGonagall advised. This is advanced magical control. Few adult wizards master such precision with any magical effect, let alone an inherited trait. Meanwhile, the mystery of Sirius Black deepened. Despite the heightened security, rumors circulated that Black had been spotted again near Hogsmeade. The fat lady had returned to her portrait, now protected by security trolls, but Sir Cadogan's brief tenure had resulted in one significant security breach. He had allowed Black into Gryffindor Tower after the escaped prisoner somehow obtained a list of passwords. The resulting incident had terrified Ron, who awoke to find Black standing over his bed with a knife, apparently having mistaken Ron's bed for Harry's. By the time the alarm was raised, Black had vanished again, leaving behind only more questions. Why target Harry so specifically yet fail to follow through when he had the chance? And how did this reconcile with the expensive, helpful gifts Harry had received, the ring and the firebolt, which increasingly seemed likely to have come from Black? It doesn't make sense, Hermione insisted during one of their discussions in the library. If he wanted to kill you, why send you gifts that help you control your abilities and improve your Quidditch performance? Maybe the gifts aren't from him, Ron suggested, though he sounded doubtful. Or maybe his intentions aren't what everyone assumes, Harry said quietly, earning startled looks from his friends. What do you mean? Hermione asked. Harry hesitated, then shared something he hadn't told them before. There was one more entry in my dad's grimoire. The very last page, in different handwriting, not my dad's. He pulled out the book, opening it to the final page. It's dated November 1981, just after my parents died. The entry was short, the handwriting jagged and uneven, as if written by someone in great distress. I failed them. Failed them all. But I swear on my life and magic, I will not fail their son. When he needs me, I will be there. When his blood awakens, I will help him understand what James would have taught him. This is my oath, my penance, my purpose. The silver fire will burn again in the Potter line. And this time, I will protect its bearer with my life. S.B. Sirius Black, Ron whispered, eyes wide. He wrote in your family book. He must have taken it after that night, Harry said. Before Hagrid arrived to collect me. Then returned it to my vault or gave it to Dumbledore at some point. But this doesn't sound like a man planning murder, Hermione said, frowning as she reread the entry. It sounds like someone swearing to protect you. Exactly, Harry agreed. Which is why nothing about Black's actions makes sense. He was my father's best friend. He knew about the Veela heritage. He apparently promised to help me with it. And now he's supposedly trying to kill me, while simultaneously sending me helpful gifts related to that very heritage. But he betrayed your parents to Voldemort, Ron reminded him. Everyone knows that. Do they? Harry challenged. What if they're wrong? What if something else happened that night? Before his friends could respond, a shadow fell across their table. They looked up to find Professor Lupin standing there, his face pale as he stared at the open grimoire. Where did you get that? He asked quietly. Professor Dumbledore gave it to me, Harry answered. It's the Potter family grimoire. Lupin's eyes fixed on the final entry. And that page? Was that included when Dumbledore gave it to you? Yes, Harry confirmed. Though we haven't discussed it specifically. Lupin seemed to struggle with himself for a moment before speaking again. May I talk with you privately, Harry? In my office? Exchanging glances with Ron and Hermione, Harry nodded and gathered his things. As they walked through the corridors, Lupin remained silent, his expression troubled. Once inside his office with the door securely closed, Lupin sank into his chair, suddenly looking far older than his years. I should have known this would surface eventually, he said, more to himself than to Harry. The timing is unervingly appropriate. Professor, Harry said carefully, do you know something about Sirius Black that you haven't told me? Lupin met Harry's eyes directly. What I know, or think I know, is complicated by years of grief, betrayal, and uncertainty. Until recently, I believed what everyone believed, that Sirius betrayed your parents to Voldemort, then killed Peter Pettigrew and 12 Muggles. But now, I'm not certain. Lupin ran a hand through his graying hair. There are discrepancies. Things that don't align with the man I knew. The Marauder's map showing Peter when he's supposedly dead. Sirius targeting your dormitory yet harming no one. The gifts matching exactly what a knowledgeable friend might send to help with your Veela heritage. He gestured to the grimoire Harry still carried. And now that entry, written in Sirius's hand, expressing not murderous intent but a vow of protection. Hope flared in Harry's chest. So you think he might be innocent? That he didn't betray my parents? I don't know, Lupin admitted. But I'm increasingly convinced there's more to the story than what became the official account. The problem is, without speaking to Sirius directly, without understanding what actually happened that night. Then let's find him, Harry said impulsively. If he's been trying to contact me through these gifts, maybe there's a way to meet safely. Lupin looked alarmed. Harry, even if my suspicions have merit, approaching an escaped convict is extremely dangerous. Sirius has spent 12 years in Azkaban, his mental state would be unpredictable at best. But if he's innocent, if he was my father's friend and wants to help me, then the best thing you can do is be patient, Lupin interrupted firmly. I will look into certain possibilities. Discreetly. But you must promise me you won't try to seek out Sirius on your own. Promise me, Harry. Reluctantly, Harry nodded. I promise. But please, if you learn anything, I'll tell you, Lupin assured him. You deserve the truth, whatever it may be. As February gave way to March, Harry honored his promise to Lupin, focusing on his studies and continued mastery of his abilities rather than actively seeking Black. But he kept the grimoire close, occasionally rereading the final entry, trying to reconcile the desperate protector who had written those words with the murderous traitor of popular account. His opportunity for answers came from an unexpected direction. One blustery Saturday in mid-March, Harry was returning alone from Quidditch practice when a large, shaggy black dog emerged from behind the greenhouses. Harry froze, remembering what Lupin had told him months ago. James was a stag, Sirius a large black dog, and Peter a rat. The dog sat on its haunches, watching Harry with intelligent grey eyes that seemed decidedly human. After a moment's consideration, it picked up a stick in its mouth and deliberately drew a pattern in the muddy ground, a crude but recognizable lightning bolt. Heart pounding, Harry glanced around to ensure they were alone before addressing the animal. Sirius? The dog's tail wagged once in confirmation. It then turned and trotted several paces toward the forbidden forest before looking back expectantly. Every logical part of Harry's brain screamed that following would be madness, that this could be a trap, that Black might truly be the murderer everyone claimed. But his instincts, perhaps guided by the same Veela intuition that helped him communicate with magical creatures, told him otherwise. This was the moment to discover the truth. I'll follow, Harry said quietly. But I'm keeping my wand ready. The dog gave what looked remarkably like a nod of approval before leading Harry along the forest's edge, staying just within the tree line to avoid being spotted from the castle. After several minutes, they reached a gap in the outer trees where a familiar willow thrashed its branches violently. The Whomping Willow. The dog darted forward, nimbly avoiding the swinging branches to press a knot on the trunk with its paw. Immediately, the tree froze. The dog then disappeared into a gap between the roots, emerging moments later to bark softly at Harry. A secret passage. Harry remembered the Marauder's map showing tunnels leading off the school grounds, including one from the Whomping Willow. With a deep breath and his wand firmly gripped, he ducked into the opening. The earthy tunnel stretched ahead, barely tall enough for Harry to stand upright. He followed it for what seemed like ages, the black dog trotting ahead and occasionally looking back to ensure Harry still followed. Finally, the passage sloped upward, ending in a dusty, dilapidated room with boarded windows and broken furniture. Harry recognized it immediately from descriptions he'd heard, the Shrieking Shack, supposedly the most haunted building in Britain. The dog padded to the center of the room, then, before Harry's eyes, transformed. Where the animal had stood, a gaunt man now straightened up, tall and skeletally thin, with matted hair hanging to his elbows and the sunken face of someone who had endured unimaginable suffering. Sirius Black. Harry raised his wand instinctively, but didn't cast. Something in the man's eyes, gray like the dog's, filled with a desperate hope, made him hesitate. "Harry," Black said, his voice hoarse from disuse. "You look so like James. But your eyes are my mother's," Harry finished, keeping his wand steady. "I've heard." A sad smile touched Black's gaunt face. "Yes. Lily's eyes exactly." He made no move to approach or draw a wand of his own. "Thank you for coming. I know it required great trust." "I'm not sure I do trust you," Harry replied honestly. "But I need answers. And you deserve them." Black gestured to a dusty sofa nearby. "Will you sit? This may take some time to explain." Harry remained standing. "Let's start with the basics. Did you betray my parents to Voldemort?" "No," Black answered immediately, his voice cracking with emotion. "I would have died before betraying James and Lily. They were my family in every way that mattered." "Then who did?" "Peter Pettigrew." The name hit Harry like a physical blow. "Pettigrew? But you killed him. And I saw him on the Marauder's map, which shouldn't be possible if he's dead." "That's just it," Black said urgently. "He's not dead. He faked his death after betraying your parents, making it look like I had killed him and those muggles. He's been hiding all these years as a rat," Harry finished, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. "An animagus rat." Black's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You know about the animagus transformations? Professor Lupin told me. And I know about my father's Veela heritage too. That's why I'm here, because of what you wrote in the grimoire. And because of the gifts." "So you got them," Black said, looking relieved. "The ring and the firebolt. I wasn't sure if they would reach you with all the security. Why send them? Why not just try to contact me directly?" "I tried," Black said grimly. "The night I broke into the castle, both times, I wasn't looking for you. I was hunting Peter. He's been hiding all these years as a pet rat belonging to Ron," Harry breathed, comprehension dawning. "Scabbers." "Yes. I recognized him from a newspaper photo last summer, the Weasley family in Egypt. He was on the boy's shoulder, missing a toe just like the finger Peter cut off to fake his death." Harry's mind raced, connecting disparate pieces of information. The timing of Scabbers' deterioration coinciding with Black's escape. His continued disappearances. The Marauder's map showing Pettigrew in the castle. Why would Pettigrew betray my parents? I thought he was their friend too. Black's face darkened. He was weak. Always gravitating toward those with power and protection. When Voldemort began rising, Peter saw which way the wind was blowing and chose his side. "And the secret keeper? Everyone thinks it was you." "It was supposed to be me," Black admitted. "I was the obvious choice, James's best friend, your godfather. But I suggested a switch at the last moment. A bluff. No one would suspect Peter. The pain in Black's voice was unmistakable. It was my idea. My fault. I as good as killed them by suggesting Peter. He broke off, overcome with emotion. When he continued, his voice was steadier. After I found them, after I found James and Lily, I gave you to Hagrid. Dumbledore had ordered him to bring you to your aunt and uncle. I wanted to take you myself, I was your godfather, and with your Veela blood likely to activate someday, I knew you'd need guidance James would have provided. But I wasn't thinking clearly. All I could focus on was finding Peter, making him pay. So you cornered him, Harry said, piecing together the story. And he framed you by killing those muggles and faking his own death. He shouted for the whole street to hear that I had betrayed James and Lily, then blew everything up with his wand behind his back, cut off his finger, and transformed. By the time the smoke cleared, he was gone into the sewers with the other rats, and I was left standing there, laughing from the shock and madness of it all. The story aligned too perfectly with the discrepancies Harry had noticed to be a convenient fabrication. And Black's behavior since escaping, the gifts, the entry in the grimoire, even his break-ins targeting Scabbers rather than Harry, supported his claims. I believe you, Harry said finally, lowering his wand. But we need proof. We need to catch Pettigrew. Relief washed over Black's wasted face. Yes. That's why I've been trying to get into Gryffindor Tower. But the rat knows I'm after him now. He's been hiding. Ron thinks he's been eaten by Hermione's cat, Crookshanks. Black barked a laugh. That magnificent cat has been helping me. He recognized Peter for what he was immediately. Been trying to catch him for months. A sudden thought struck Harry. Wait, if Pettigrew is alive and hiding as Scabbers, we have a problem. Ron keeps Scabbers in our dormitory. Which means at any moment, the real traitor who sold out my parents is sleeping a few feet away from me, able to transform and do whatever Voldemort's supporters might want to do to me. Black's expression turned grim. Exactly. That's why I've been so desperate to get to him. Not just for revenge anymore, but to protect you. Especially now that your Veela heritage has activated. How did you know about that? The signs were there even before I broke out, Black explained. The Dementors can't affect animagi the same way they do humans while we're transformed. It let me keep enough sanity to notice things, like the date approaching. I knew from James that Potter Veela traits typically manifest around the 13th year. He took a tentative step closer. And I made a vow, Harry. That night, holding you in the ruins of your home before Hagrid came, I swore I would protect you, help you understand the heritage James would have guided you through. It's been the one thought, beyond my innocence, that kept me sane in Azkaban. The raw emotion in Black's voice convinced Harry more than any logical argument could have. This was not a man consumed by murderous intent, but one driven by a desperate need to fulfill a promise. We need a plan, Harry said decisively. To catch Pettigrew and prove your innocence. And we'll need help. He thought quickly. Professor Lupin already suspects something's not right. He's seen Pettigrew's name on the map too. Remus, Black said softly. Yes, he would be the one to notice discrepancies. Always the observant one. I should go back before I'm missed, Harry said, checking his watch. But I'll find a way to contact you. We'll work out a plan to trap Pettigrew. As Harry turned to leave, Black called after him. Harry, the ring I sent you. Has it helped? With your control? Yes, Harry confirmed. Though I don't need it as much anymore. I've been learning techniques from the grimoire and from my professors. Pride shone in Black's hollow eyes. James would be so pleased. He struggled with his abilities at first too, you know. Less intensely than you, from what I gather, but the adjustment was still difficult. My abilities seem stronger than his were, Harry acknowledged. Dumbledore thinks it might have something to do with my mother's sacrifice and the protection it created. Black nodded thoughtfully. Magic often interacts in unexpected ways. But you're handling it well. Getting better every day, Harry assured him. I've even found some useful applications, like communicating with certain magical creatures. That's excellent, Black said, genuine warmth in his voice. There's something else you should know, though. Something about your heritage that even James didn't discover until after Hogwarts. What's that? The Veela gift isn't just about attraction or influence. In its purest form, it's about connection, about forming bonds. In those with Potter blood, it sometimes manifests as a kind of empathic intuition. An ability to sense not just emotions, but intentions. To know, instinctively, who can be trusted and who cannot. Harry thought about his instant connection with Ron on the Hogwarts Express their first year. His immediate dislike of Malfoy. His trust in Hagrid despite the gamekeeper's intimidating appearance. Had those been more than just normal instincts? That's why you're here now, Black continued. Not just because of the evidence, but because something in you recognized the truth when you saw me. The same way James always knew who his real friends were, or should have known, if he hadn't overridden his instincts about Peter out of loyalty. The insight resonated with Harry on a deep level. He'd always had strong, immediate reactions to people, positive and negative, that had generally proven accurate. I'll keep that in mind, he promised. And I'll be in touch soon about Pettigrew. As Harry made his way back through the tunnel, his mind whirled with new information and possibilities. Black was innocent. Pettigrew was alive, and dangerous. And Harry's Veela heritage included aspects he was only beginning to understand. The silver fire in his veins wasn't just about attraction or influence, but about connection, about seeing truth beneath surfaces. It was time to embrace that gift fully, not just to control it, but to use it as the asset it was meant to be. The weeks that followed Harry's secret meeting with Sirius were filled with careful planning and growing tension. He had immediately shared the revelations with Ron and Hermione, whose reactions ranged from shock, Ron, to vindicated suspicion, Hermione, who had never trusted Scabbers since Crookshanks began targeting him. So my rat, isn't a rat? Ron had said weakly. He's been sleeping in my bed for 3 years, and he's actually a grown man. That's disgusting. And dangerous, Hermione emphasized. If he realizes we know. The immediate problem was that Scabbers had vanished weeks earlier, presumably hiding somewhere in the castle. Their first priority became finding the rat while simultaneously bringing Professor Lupin into their confidence. Harry approached Lupin after their next Patronus lesson, sharing everything he had learned from Sirius. The professor's reaction was a complex mixture of hope, guilt, and caution. I've suspected something was wrong with the official story, Lupin admitted. Especially since seeing Peter's name on the map. But to think he's been hiding all these years as the Weasleys' pet. You believe Sirius, then? Harry pressed. I want to, Lupin said carefully. It would make more sense of certain things I remember. But Harry, we need absolute proof. Capturing Pettigrew is essential. With Lupin's reluctant agreement to help, they formed a small conspiracy, Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Professor Lupin working to locate Pettigrew while maintaining normal appearances. Meanwhile, Harry maintained cautious communication with Sirius through notes left at the Whomping Willow, which Crookshanks would deliver. April arrived with no sign of Scabbers/Pettigrew, though the Marauder's map occasionally showed him scurrying through remote parts of the castle, always disappearing before anyone could intercept him. The stress of the hunt, combined with the approaching exams and Harry's continued training, created a pressure cooker atmosphere for the trio. It was during this tense period that Harry's Veela abilities were unexpectedly tested in a new way. With spring warming the grounds, Care of Magical Creatures classes moved to the edge of the forest, where Hagrid introduced them to a new creature each session as part of their exam preparation. Today, Hagrid announced one bright morning, we'll be studying something special. Rare opportunity, this is. He led the class toward a small clearing where a magnificent creature waited, horse-like in body, but with the head and wings of an enormous eagle. Unlike Buckbeak, this hippogriff had silver feathers that gleamed in the sunlight. "This is Quicksilver," Hagrid explained proudly. "A female hippogriff visiting from the continent. Bit more temperamental than Buckbeak, so we'll be extra respectful." Harry felt an immediate connection with the creature, whose golden eyes seemed to fix on him with unusual interest. When Hagrid asked for volunteers to approach her, Harry stepped forward without hesitation. "Good man, Harry," Hagrid approved. "Remember the protocol, bow first, maintain eye contact." Harry followed the familiar routine, bowing deeply to Quicksilver while maintaining steady eye contact. But as he straightened, something unexpected happened. The hippogriff didn't merely bow in return, she approached Harry directly, bypassing the usual cautious assessment. When she reached him, Quicksilver did something that drew gasps from the watching class. She lowered her head and pressed her beak gently against Harry's chest, directly over the pendant beneath his robes. "Well, I never," Hagrid murmured, clearly astonished. "She's recognizing something in ya, Harry." Instinctively, Harry reached up to stroke the feathers on Quicksilver's neck. As his fingers made contact, a peculiar sensation flowed through him, a silver warmth similar to his Veela energy but somehow different, more wild and ancient. The pendant, Harry realized, speaking softly to Hagrid. "It contains a Veela feather. I think she's responding to that." Hagrid's eyes widened in understanding. "Course. Hippogriffs and Veela share distant ancestry, magical creatures tied to air elements. She's recognizing kin, in a manner speaking." The moment was interrupted by Draco Malfoy's drawling voice. "Of course Potter gets special treatment from the beasts too. Probably using that unnatural charm of his." Harry tensed, expecting Quicksilver to react negatively to Malfoy's tone as Buckbeak had months earlier. Instead, to his surprise, he felt the hippogriff's muscles relax under his hand. She was taking cues from him rather than responding to Malfoy directly. "Interesting," Hagrid said quietly, noticing the same thing. "She's bonding with ya, Harry. Forming a trust connection. Like I said, your gift has potential well beyond what most realize." After class, Hagrid held Harry back for a private word. "That was remarkable today. Quicksilver doesn't usually take to anyone, she's known for being particular. But with you." He shook his shaggy head in wonder. "It felt different from Buckbeak," Harry admitted. "More immediate. Like she recognized something in me." "She did," Hagrid confirmed. "What most wizards don't understand about magical creatures is that they see magic differently than we do. Not just spells and wands, but the inherent magic in bloodlines, in connections." He looked at Harry meaningfully. "Your Veela heritage gives ya a bridge to certain creatures that most wizards lack. It's a rare gift. Does this help Buckbeak's case?" Harry asked hopefully, remembering the upcoming appeal. "Could do," Hagrid nodded. "The committee's scheduled the appeal for early June. Having examples of multiple hippogriffs responding positively to ya strengthens our argument that Buckbeak's reaction to Malfoy was provoked, not natural aggression." As April faded into May, Harry found himself increasingly drawing on his Veela intuition, the empathic sense Black had mentioned, in their search for Pettigrew. The ability was subtle but undeniable. On several occasions, Harry sensed the rat's presence in areas where the map later confirmed he had been. "It's like a feeling of wrongness," Harry tried to explain to his friends. "A dissonance. Hard to describe, but I'm getting better at recognizing it." "That could be incredibly useful," Hermione mused. "If you can sense his presence even without seeing him." The breakthrough came in late May, as exams approached and students spent increasing hours in the library. Harry, studying with Ron and Hermione near the restricted section, felt the familiar unpleasant prickle that had come to signal Pettigrew's proximity. "He's here," Harry whispered, setting down his quill. "Somewhere close." Ron immediately checked under their table and nearby shelves while Hermione casually positioned herself to block one potential escape route. Harry closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the sensation and trying to pinpoint its direction. "That way," he murmured, nodding toward a particularly dusty row of shelves rarely used by students. Moving slowly. They coordinated silently, years of friendship allowing them to communicate with mere glances. Ron circled around one end of the shelf while Harry approached from the other. Hermione remained at the table, wand casually ready beneath a book. As Harry rounded the corner, he spotted movement, a gray blur scurrying between stacks of old parchment. Without hesitation, he cast the spell they had practiced specifically for this moment. Immobilis. The freezing charm struck true, stopping the rat mid-flight. Ron arrived seconds later, eyes widening at the sight of his former pet now rigidly frozen. "That's him," he confirmed grimly. "That's Scabbers." Hermione joined them, quickly casting additional containment charms while Harry sent a message to Lupin using the enchanted parchment they had prepared for this purpose. Minutes later, the defense professor arrived, his face grave as he examined the immobilized rat. "It's him," Lupin confirmed quietly. "I'd recognize Peter anywhere, even in this form." He performed a complex series of additional spells to ensure Pettigrew couldn't transform or escape. "We need to take him somewhere secure immediately." "My office, I've prepared for this possibility." The group moved swiftly through the corridors, Pettigrew secured in a conjured cage reinforced with multiple charms. They had barely reached Lupin's office when the door burst open behind them to reveal a breathless Professor McGonagall. "Remus. What is the meaning of?" She stopped abruptly, taking in the scene, 3 students, Lupin, and a caged rat surrounded by unusually complex containment spells. Her eyes narrowed. "Explain. Now." Lupin straightened, meeting her gaze steadily. "Minerva, I believe we have captured Peter Pettigrew." McGonagall's expression cycled rapidly through disbelief, confusion, and sharp assessment. "Pettigrew? But that's impossible. He's dead. Black killed him 12 years ago." "That's what we all believed," Lupin agreed. "But the evidence suggests otherwise." He gestured to the cage. "This rat is an animagus, specifically, Peter Pettigrew, who faked his death and framed Sirius Black." "A serious accusation," McGonagall said, though Harry noticed she hadn't dismissed it outright. "What evidence do you have beyond this, rat?" Harry stepped forward. "Professor, we've tracked his movements for weeks using the Marauder's map, which shows his name clearly. And there's more. Much more, if you'll let us explain." McGonagall's gaze shifted between Harry and the cage, her expression calculating. "The headmaster should be informed immediately." "Agreed," Lupin said promptly. "But I suggest we confirm our suspicions first, with the animagus reversal spell. If I'm wrong, no harm done to Mr. Weasley's pet. If I'm right." After a moment's consideration, McGonagall nodded sharply. "Very well. Stand back, all of you." She drew her wand with practiced precision. "Release the immobilization charm only, Remus. I'll handle the rest." When Lupin removed the freezing spell, McGonagall cast instantly, her spell striking the rat with blue-white light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the rat began to twist and grow, its form distorting grotesquely until a short, balding man with small watery eyes and a pointed nose crouched before them. "Merlin's beard," McGonagall whispered, her normally composed expression giving way to shock. "Peter Pettigrew." The man's eyes darted frantically around the room, settling finally on Harry with an expression of calculated desperation. "Harry. Harry, you look so like your father, like James. My old friend James. Surely you wouldn't let them hurt me?" A wave of revulsion washed through Harry, not just emotional disgust, but a visceral reaction of his Veela senses to the falseness emanating from Pettigrew. The dissonance he'd been detecting for weeks now had a face. "You betrayed my parents," Harry said, his voice steady despite the anger burning within him. "You sold them to Voldemort. Then framed my godfather and hid as a rat for 12 years. Pettigrew flinched, his facade crumbling. You don't understand. The Dark Lord, you have no idea the weapons he possesses. What would you have done? Died rather than betray my friends, Harry answered without hesitation. What followed was a flurry of activity that seemed to compress time. Dumbledore arrived, his usual twinkling benevolence replaced by formidable authority as he assessed the situation. Pettigrew, bound securely, was questioned under the influence of Veritaserum administered by Professor Snape, whose face remained impassive even as the truth of Black's innocence became undeniable. Within hours, Ministry officials arrived, including the Minister for Magic himself. Despite Fudge's initial reluctance to accept such an extraordinary reversal of established fact, the evidence was irrefutable. Pettigrew was taken into custody, and orders were issued to cease the pursuit of Sirius Black pending a formal review of the case. Through it all, Harry felt strangely detached yet hyper-aware, his Veela senses heightened by the emotional intensity surrounding him. He could perceive the currents of disbelief, calculation, and adjustment flowing through the adults as they grappled with this profound correction to history. It was well after midnight when Harry was finally alone with Ron and Hermione in the Gryffindor common room, the enormity of what they had accomplished beginning to sink in. "He'll be free," Harry said quietly, staring into the dying embers of the fire. "Sirius will be cleared. And he's your godfather," Ron added. "Does that mean that I could live with him instead of the Dursleys?" Harry finished, a fragile hope blossoming. "I don't know. Maybe." Hermione, ever practical, tempered their expectations. "There will be legal procedures, Harry. Sirius has been in Azkaban for 12 years, he'll need time to recover, establish a home." "I know," Harry acknowledged. "But just knowing he's out there, that he cares, that I have family who understands what I'm going through with my heritage." The thought filled him with a warmth different from his Veela fire, the simple, profound warmth of belonging. Of connection. Of family. As dawn approached, Harry stood by the window watching the sky lighten. Somewhere out there, Sirius was still in hiding, unaware that his name would soon be cleared. That the vow he had made in the Potter Grimoire, to protect and guide the bearer of the silver fire, could now be fulfilled openly. The year had brought challenges Harry could never have anticipated, the awakening of his Veela heritage, the struggle for control, the discovery of a godfather he never knew he had. But standing in the quiet morning light, Harry felt a sense of integration and purpose. The silver fire was no longer a foreign presence to be feared or controlled, but a part of himself to be understood and directed. And as Sirius had suggested, its most valuable aspect might not be the external influence it granted, but the internal guidance it provided, the ability to sense truth, to forge genuine connections, to see beneath surfaces to the heart of matters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, explaining to the school how the presumed dead Pettigrew had been hiding as a rat for years, helping Sirius navigate his newfound freedom, continuing to master his evolving abilities. But for now, in the silent dawn, Harry allowed himself to simply be present with all he had gained. The silver fire burned steady within him, no longer wild and unpredictable, but a constant source of warmth and light, illuminating not just his own path forward, but the connections that would guide him along the way. Chapter 3, Blood and Truth. The news of Peter Pettigrew's capture and Sirius Black's innocence spread through Hogwarts like wildfire. By breakfast the following morning, the Great Hall buzzed with speculation, theories, and increasingly wild rumors about how a supposedly dead hero had been living as the Weasley family pet for 12 years. Harry entered amid the chaos, immediately feeling dozens of eyes turned toward him. For once, the attention had nothing to do with his Veela heritage and everything to do with his connection to the most sensational wizarding news in years. "There he is. Potter actually found Pettigrew. I heard he sensed the rat with some kind of special magic, Daily Prophets offering 1,000 galleons for his exclusive story." Ignoring the whispers, Harry slid into his seat beside Ron and Hermione, who had arrived earlier to secure a relatively quiet corner of the Gryffindor table. "It's mental out there," Ron muttered, passing Harry a stack of toast. 3 reporters tried to get onto the grounds this morning. McGonagall sent them packing, but they're camped at the gates now." Hermione pushed the morning's Daily Prophet toward him. They're calling it the betrayal of the century. The minister is facing serious questions about how an innocent man was imprisoned without a trial. Harry scanned the front page, where an old photograph of Sirius, young, handsome, laughing beside James Potter at what appeared to be a wedding, contrasted sharply with the gaunt, hollow-eyed man from wanted posters. Sirius Black innocent. Pettigrew alive. Ministry in chaos as greatest betrayal since Judas, uncovered. They've already scheduled an emergency session of the Wisengamot, Hermione continued, tapping a paragraph halfway down the page. Sirius will need to appear to be formally cleared, but Dumbledore says it's just a formality now that they have Pettigrew. When? Harry asked, his appetite suddenly returning with the prospect of Sirius's freedom. Tomorrow morning. Fudge is rushing it through to contain the political damage. Hermione lowered her voice. Dumbledore wants to see you after breakfast, by the way. I expect it's about Sirius. Harry nodded, taking a bite of toast while scanning the rest of the article. Most of it recapped what they already knew, though with dramatic flair typical of the prophet. The reporters had clearly pieced together that Harry, Ron, and Hermione had been involved in Pettigrew's capture, but details remained vague, something Harry was grateful for. Potter. Harry looked up to find Draco Malfoy standing beside their table, his expression uncharacteristically subdued. Without his usual flanking bodyguards, Malfoy seemed smaller somehow, less certain. What do you want, Malfoy? Ron demanded, hand moving toward his wand. Malfoy ignored him, addressing Harry directly. My father sent an owl this morning. He says Black was never officially disowned from the Black family, despite being imprisoned. He paused. That makes him my mother's cousin. My second cousin once removed, or something like that. Harry wasn't sure how to respond. Okay. The point is, Malfoy continued, a hint of his usual drawl returning, this changes things. Family politics are complicated. Don't expect me to start sending Black Christmas cards, but... He straightened his shoulders. The feud between us might need recalibration. With that cryptic statement, he turned and walked away, leaving Harry staring after him in confusion. What just happened? Ron asked, bewildered. Hermione looked thoughtful. Pure blood politics. With Sirius exonerated, the Malfoys need to reconsider their position. The Black family is still powerful, even with just one surviving member. Draco's mother is a Black by birth, which means there's a family connection to navigate. So Malfoy's calling a truce because Sirius and I are connected? Harry frowned. That doesn't sound like him. Not a truce, Hermione clarified. A recalibration. He's keeping his options open while the political landscape shifts. She shrugged. It's actually rather pragmatic of him. Before Harry could respond, Professor McGonagall approached their table. Mr. Potter, the headmaster would like to see you in his office immediately. The password is, Fizzing Whizbee. Dumbledore wasn't alone when Harry entered his office. A tall, bald black wizard with a single gold earring stood by the window, his deep purple robes marking him as someone of importance. Beside him sat a witch with a monocle and severe grey hair, examining documents spread across a portion of Dumbledore's desk. Ah, Harry, Dumbledore greeted him warmly. Thank you for coming so promptly. Allow me to introduce Kingsley Shacklebolt, Auror, and Madame Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Both officials nodded in greeting, studying Harry with professional interest. Please, sit down, Dumbledore continued. We have much to discuss regarding Sirius Black and your role in uncovering the truth. Harry took the offered chair, suddenly aware that this was an official meeting rather than a casual chat. Is Sirius all right? Has anyone found him yet? That's part of why we're here, Mr. Potter, Madame Bones replied, her voice brisk but not unkind. While the evidence provided by Peter Pettigrew is compelling, we need to formally interview Sirius Black to complete our investigation and officially clear his name. The challenge, added Kingsley in a deep, calming voice, is that Black remains in hiding, understandably wary after 12 years of being hunted. We hoped you might have insights into contacting him." Harry hesitated, looking to Dumbledore, who nodded encouragingly. "I've met him," Harry admitted. "About a week ago. He's been staying near Hogsmeade, keeping an eye on the castle because he knew Pettigrew was hiding here." Kingsley and Madame Bones exchanged glances. "And do you have a means of contacting him now?" Madame Bones asked. Harry thought of Crookshanks, who had been serving as their messenger. "Possibly. But I'd need assurances he'll be safe. That this isn't a trap." Rather than taking offense, Madame Bones seemed to approve of his caution. "A reasonable concern. I can provide a magical oath that Sirius Black will not be harmed, detained, or hindered when he appears before the Wizengamot tomorrow. His wand will be returned, and he will leave the ministry a free man, with full apologies and compensation." "I'll contact him, then," Harry agreed. "But I'll need to do it alone." "Understood," Kingsley nodded. "We'll provide you with an official summons for the Wizengamot hearing, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Both you and Black should attend." After discussing a few more details about the hearing, including how Harry would travel to the ministry, flew from Dumbledore's office, the officials prepared to leave. As they gathered their documents, Madame Bones paused, studying Harry with renewed interest. "I understand from Albus that you've experienced a significant magical inheritance this year," she said, her tone carefully neutral. Harry tensed slightly. "Yes, ma'am. Veela heritage is rare but not unheard of in wizarding families," she continued. "My department oversees the registry of inherited magical traits. Normally, we'd require formal registration, but given your unique circumstances and the protections already in place through Hogwarts." She glanced at Dumbledore. "We can defer that process until you're of age, if Albus continues to provide appropriate supervision and training." "Thank you," Harry said, relieved to avoid additional ministry entanglements. After the officials departed, Dumbledore regarded Harry thoughtfully over his half-moon spectacles. "I suspect you already have a means of reaching Sirius promptly," he said, eyes twinkling. "Perhaps involving a certain passage beneath the Whomping Willow?" Harry couldn't help but smile. "You know about that?" "My dear boy, that passage was created during my time as headmaster, for reasons that perhaps Sirius himself should explain to you." Dumbledore rose, walking to Fawkes's perch to stroke the phoenix's brilliant plumage. "I've taken the liberty of suspending the enchantments preventing the passage's use. You may find your way there unimpeded this afternoon." "Thank you, sir." Harry paused, considering his next words carefully. "Professor, when Sirius is cleared, would it be possible for me to live with him? Instead of the Dursleys?" Dumbledore's expression grew serious. "I anticipated this question. It's complicated, Harry, by the protective magic your mother's sacrifice created. The blood protection at your aunt's home remains the strongest shield against Voldemort and his followers." Seeing Harry's disappointment, he continued gently, "However, given your developing Veela traits and the Dursleys' demonstrated unsuitability for nurturing magical abilities, we might arrange a compromise. Perhaps divided time, with suitable protective enchantments at Sirius's residence." It wasn't everything Harry had hoped for, but it was more than he'd expected. "That would be brilliant, sir. Thank you." "Now," Dumbledore said, his tone lightening, "I believe you have a godfather to contact in classes to attend. Professor McGonagall mentioned something about an especially important transfiguration lesson this afternoon." Harry groaned, suddenly remembering the complex transfiguration sequence McGonagall had been preparing them for all week. With everything happening with Sirius, he'd barely practiced. The shrieking shack looked less menacing in daylight, though no less dilapidated. Dust motes danced in the shafts of afternoon sunlight penetrating the boarded windows as Harry made his way through the silent rooms, calling softly for Sirius. He found him in an upstairs bedroom, dozing in human form on a shabby four-poster bed. Sirius jolted awake at Harry's entrance, relaxing only when he recognized his visitor. "Harry!" He sat up quickly, running a hand through his matted hair. What's happened? Is everything all right? Everything's brilliant, Harry grinned, unable to contain his excitement. We caught Pettigrew. He confessed under Veritaserum, and the Ministry knows you're innocent now. Sirius froze, his gaunt face a mask of disbelief. Peter confessed. They know. Everything, Harry confirmed. About the secret keeper switch, him framing you, all of it. The Daily Prophet's calling it the scandal of the century. Fudge is scrambling to save face. A series of emotions crossed Sirius's face, shock, hope, vindication, and finally, a fragile joy. I never thought, after all this time. His voice cracked, and he looked away, composing himself. When he turned back, his eyes shone with unshed tears. How did you manage it? Harry explained how they had tracked Pettigrew using the Marauder's map and his newly developing Veela intuition, eventually cornering him in the library. Your father would be so proud, Sirius said softly when Harry finished. Using the map we created and abilities from his bloodline to capture the real traitor. There's a certain poetry to it. There's more, Harry continued, handing over the official summons. The Wisengamot is holding an emergency session tomorrow morning to formally clear your name. Madam Bones, the head of magical law enforcement, gave her oath that it's not a trap. You'll be free, officially. Sirius examined the parchment, his hands trembling slightly. After 12 years. He murmured. Freedom. You'll need to be there at 10, Harry said. I'm going too. Dumbledore's arranged for us to use his flu. Sirius nodded, still staring at the summons as if it might vanish. Then he looked up at Harry, his expression shifting to concern. You shouldn't have come alone. It's still dangerous until I'm officially cleared. If anyone saw you. Dumbledore suspended the enchantments on the passage, Harry explained. He knows I'm here. And I needed to see you, to tell you in person. Thank you, Sirius said simply. For believing in me when no one else would. For finding Peter. For everything. They spent the next hour discussing practical matters, what Sirius should expect at the hearing, how he should prepare, where he would go afterward. The question of Harry potentially living with him arose naturally. I've already spoken to Dumbledore about it, Harry said eagerly. He says there might be a way to divide my time between you and the Dursleys, to maintain the blood protection while still giving me time away from them. Sirius looked thoughtful. That might be for the best, at least initially. Blood magic is powerful, your mother's protection shouldn't be discarded lightly. He smiled wryly. Besides, I'm hardly in a position to provide a proper home immediately. 12 years in Azkaban doesn't prepare one for domesticity. Where will you go after tomorrow? Harry asked. I still own my family's house in London, Sirius replied, though he didn't seem enthusiastic about it. Grim old place, but secure. I'll need time to make it properly habitable, but it could work as a base while I sort things out. He hesitated. Harry, there's something else we should discuss before tomorrow. Something about your Veela heritage. What about it? Sirius sat forward, his expression earnest. The ministry officials who interviewed you, did they mention registration? The Registry of Inherited Magical Traits. Madam Bones mentioned it, but said it could wait until I'm of age. Good, Sirius nodded, looking relieved. That gives us time. You should know that registration has implications for those with Veela blood. Historically, the ministry has sometimes imposed restrictions on registered individuals, monitored travel, limitations on certain professions, even restrictions on who they can marry. Harry stared at him in alarm. They can do that? They've done it in the past, Sirius confirmed grimly. The laws are still on the books, though rarely enforced these days. But with your profile, the boy who lived, now with Veela abilities, there's a risk they might revive those restrictions under the guise of public safety. What can I do? If the law requires registration. Knowledge is our first defense, Sirius said firmly. I've arranged something that should help. He reached under the bed and withdrew a small, leather-bound book. This contains a complete legal history of Veela rights and restrictions in Wizarding Britain, compiled by a contact I trust. Study it carefully. Knowledge of the law is often the best protection against it. Harry accepted the book, adding it to his growing collection of Veela-related resources. Thank you. I'll read it tonight. As the afternoon waned, Harry reluctantly prepared to leave. Before departing, he hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering him since learning the truth about Pettigrew. Sirius. Professor Lupin mentioned something about the Whomping Willow passage being created for a specific reason. Do you know what he meant? A shadow crossed Sirius's face. That's Remus's story to tell, not mine. Ask him after tomorrow, once everything's settled. He'll understand why you're asking. With a promise to meet the following morning in Dumbledore's office, Harry made his way back through the tunnel, mind buzzing with all they had discussed. The prospect of Sirius's freedom, the possibility of living with someone who actually wanted him, the warnings about ministry registration, it was almost too much to process. As he emerged near the Whomping Willow, carefully avoiding its quiescent branches, Harry noticed a figure waiting at a safe distance, Professor Snape, his black robes billowing slightly in the evening breeze. Potter, Snape said coldly as Harry approached. The headmaster asked me to ensure your safe return to the castle. Thank you, sir, Harry replied, surprised by this unexpected escort. They walked in uncomfortable silence for several minutes before Snape spoke again, his voice carefully controlled. I understand Black will be officially exonerated tomorrow. Yes, sir. I suppose congratulations are in order, Snape continued, though he sounded as if the words pained him. Your intuition regarding Pettigrew proved correct. Harry glanced at his professor in surprise. This was as close to a compliment as Snape had ever offered him. The headmaster suggests your Veela heritage may have contributed to your ability to discern the truth in this situation, Snape added. An interesting application of what is typically considered merely a social influence. It helped me sense when Pettigrew was nearby, Harry acknowledged. Like a dissonance or wrongness I could feel. Snape nodded curtly. Magical intuition is often undervalued in contemporary wizarding education. Too much emphasis on wand technique and incantation, not enough on the innate magical senses. They had reached the castle entrance when Snape paused, seeming to wrestle with himself before speaking again. Your father's Veela traits were less pronounced than yours, he said finally. But not insignificant. They contributed to his popularity. The word seemed difficult for Snape to say without bitterness. Did it affect you? Harry asked boldly. His aura. Snape's black eyes flashed. Contrary to what you might imagine, Potter, I was never particularly susceptible to such influence. Perhaps because I saw through the superficial charm to the arrogance beneath. But something in his tone made Harry wonder if that was entirely true. Before he could respond, Snape continued. Your mother, however, was completely immune. One of the few. A strange expression crossed his face. Lily Evans saw people for who they truly were, not the facade they presented. It was her greatest gift, and sometimes her greatest burden. With that cryptic statement, Snape turned abruptly. You should prepare for tomorrow, Potter. The Wizengamot will not be a friendly audience, despite Black's imminent exoneration. Politics rarely yields to truth without a struggle. As Harry watched Snape's retreating form, he pondered this rare glimpse into the complex history between his parents and their contemporaries. Even now, years later, the emotions remained raw. The Ministry of Magic atrium bustled with unusual activity for a Saturday morning. Officials hurried across the polished floor, reporters clustered near the security checkpoint, and ordinary witches and wizards gathered in small groups, clearly hoping to witness history in the making. Harry and Sirius had arrived via fleur to Dumbledore's private ministry entrance, bypassing the main atrium to avoid the press. Now they waited in a small antechamber adjacent to the Wisingamot chambers, Sirius pacing nervously while Harry watched from a bench against the wall. The transformation in Sirius after just one night of preparation was remarkable. Cleaned up, with his hair cut and beard trimmed, wearing formal robes provided by Dumbledore, he looked almost like the handsome man from old photographs, though still too thin, with shadows haunting his eyes that would likely never fully disappear. "You're sure the summons didn't specify charges?" Sirius asked for the third time, tugging at his collar. "Nothing about being an unregistered animagus or breaking out of Azkaban. Just the review of your case and formal exoneration," Harry assured him. "Madam Bones gave her oath, remember?" Sirius nodded, though he continued pacing. 12 years of being the Ministry's most wanted criminal makes one somewhat skeptical of official promises. The door opened to admit Professor Lupin, looking unusually formal in patched but clean dress robes. His face lit up at the sight of Sirius, and the two men embraced without hesitation. "Moony," Sirius said hoarsely. "You came." "Of course I came, you mangy mutt," Lupin replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Someone has to make sure you don't put your foot in your mouth in front of the entire Wisingamot." As they separated, Harry noticed the years seeming to fall away from both men, a glimpse of the young friends they had once been, before tragedy and betrayal had torn their lives apart. "Harry," Lupin greeted him warmly. "Holding up all right? These proceedings can be intimidating." "I'm fine," Harry replied. More worried about Sirius, honestly. "He'll be magnificent," Lupin assured him. "Your godfather always did perform best with an audience." Sirius barked a laugh. "Some things never change, I suppose." A Ministry official appeared at the door. "They're ready for you now, Mr. Black. Mr. Potter, you'll be seated in the witness area." The Wisingamot chamber was imposing, a large, circular room with tiered seating surrounding a central floor. Members in plum-colored robes filled most of the seats, their expressions ranging from sympathy to skepticism to outright hostility. In the highest tier sat Minister Fudge, looking distinctly uncomfortable, with Dumbledore beside him in his capacity as Chief Warlock. Harry was led to a section reserved for witnesses, where Hermione and Ron were already waiting, having traveled separately with Mr. Weasley, who now sat with them. In the center of the chamber floor stood a single chair with chains on the arms, though they remained loose and unthreatening as Sirius took his seat. "Disciplinary hearing of the 10th of June, Fudge began, his voice echoing through the chamber, "convened to review the case of Sirius Orion Black, previously convicted in absentia of betraying James and Lily Potter to he who must not be named, and of the murder of Peter Pettigrew and 12 Muggle bystanders." He cleared his throat. Interrogators: Cornelius Oswald Fudge, Minister for Magic; Amelia Susan Bones, Head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement; Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, Chief Warlock. Court Scribe: Percy Ignatius Weasley. Harry spotted Percy at a table below the front tier, looking important as he prepared to record the proceedings. In light of new evidence, Fudge continued, specifically the capture and confession under Veritaserum of Peter Pettigrew, previously believed deceased, this hearing will determine whether the conviction of Sirius Black should be overturned and full exoneration granted. What followed was a methodical presentation of evidence, transcripts of Pettigrew's confession, testimonies from the Aurors who had apprehended him, and expert analysis of the magical signature from the explosion that had killed the 12 Muggles, now proven to match Pettigrew's wand rather than Black's. Throughout the presentation, Sirius sat calmly, answering questions directly and without embellishment when called upon. Harry could sense the strategic restraint in his godfather's demeanor, no accusations against the Ministry for its failure to provide a trial, no bitter recriminations for 12 lost years. Just the facts, presented with dignity. When Harry was called to testify about finding Pettigrew, he felt a subtle shift in the chamber's attention, not just professional interest in his testimony, but the familiar heightened awareness his Veela aura tended to provoke. Despite his improved control, the stress of the situation made perfect suppression difficult. Remembering Sirius's warning about ministry attitudes toward Veela-blooded wizards, Harry deliberately reached for the silver ring in his pocket, slipping it on as he approached the witness chair. The immediate damping effect on his aura was noticeable. The focused attention of the Wizengamot members shifted from slightly entranced to merely polite. Harry recounted the discovery of Scabbers' true identity as straightforwardly as possible, focusing on the evidence from the Marauder's map and careful observation rather than mentioning his Veela intuition. When questioned about his meetings with Sirius, he emphasized his godfather's protective intentions and efforts to capture the real culprit. After Harry returned to his seat, Dumbledore rose to address the Wizengamot. Members of the court, the evidence before us today compels an inescapable conclusion: a grievous miscarriage of justice has occurred. Sirius Black, heir to the noble and most ancient house of Black, godfather to Harry Potter, and loyal friend to James and Lily Potter, has spent 12 years in prison for crimes he did not commit. He surveyed the chamber gravely. No trial was conducted. No veritaserum administered. No examination of wands performed. In our haste to close a painful chapter in our history, we abandoned the very principles of justice our society claims to uphold. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as Dumbledore continued. I submit that the only appropriate response is immediate and complete exoneration, restoration of all rights and properties, and appropriate compensation for years wrongfully spent in Azkaban. Madame Bones stood next. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement concurs with the Chief Warlock's assessment. We recommend full exoneration with formal apology, financial compensation in the amount of 10,000 galleons per year of wrongful imprisonment, restoration of the Black family seat on the Wizengamot, and immediate destruction of all documents listing Sirius Black as a criminal. Minister Fudge, clearly recognizing the political winds, nodded emphatically. The ministry acknowledges its grievous error and supports all recommendations. We must right this wrong without delay. The vote that followed was unanimous, 52 wands raised in agreement, not a single objection. With a wave of his wand, Dumbledore vanished the chains from Sirius's chair completely. Sirius Orion Black, you are hereby declared innocent of all charges previously brought against you. Your record is expunged, your rights restored, and the ministry's formal apology entered into record. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. You are, in every sense of the word, a free man. The chamber erupted in applause, polite from the Wizengamot members, enthusiastic from the visitors section where Harry, Ron, and Hermione cheered loudly. Sirius stood, looking slightly dazed, as Kingsley Shacklebolt approached to present him with his original wand, preserved in ministry custody since his arrest. As the formal proceedings concluded, Harry pushed through the crowd toward his godfather, who caught him in a fierce embrace. We did it, Sirius murmured. You did it. We both did, Harry corrected, grinning so widely his cheeks hurt. They were quickly surrounded by well-wishers, Lupin, the Weasleys, Hermione, and various ministry officials eager to be seen congratulating the newly exonerated Lord Black. Through it all, Sirius kept a hand on Harry's shoulder, as if anchoring himself in this new reality where he was no longer a fugitive but a free man with a godson to care for. As they made their way from the chamber, navigating through reporters shouting questions, Sirius leaned close to Harry. I noticed you used the ring during your testimony, he said quietly. Good instinct. I remembered what you said about the ministry's attitudes, Harry replied. Seemed safer to dampen things. Sirius nodded approvingly. Sharp thinking. We'll talk more about that later, but for now, he grinned, a flash of his old mischievous self breaking through. I believe I was promised a celebratory lunch at the Leaky Cauldron. My first public meal as a free man in 12 years. The celebration that followed was both joyous and surreal. Tom the innkeeper cleared the private dining room for their party, refusing payment and bringing out his finest fire whiskey for the adults and butterbeer for the students. Toasts were made, stories shared, and gradually, the stiffness in Sirius's demeanor melted away as he reconnected with old friends and began forging bonds with the younger generation. Harry watched his godfather with a warm sense of fulfillment. For the first time in his life, he had family who truly wanted him. someone who understood both his wizard heritage from his parents and his newly awakened Veela abilities. Whatever challenges still lay ahead, he would no longer face them alone. The return to Hogwarts brought Harry back to more immediate concerns. Exams began Monday morning, giving him precious little time to prepare after the excitement of the Wizengamot hearing. Sunday found him, Ron, and Hermione huddled in the library, desperately reviewing transfiguration theories and charm variations between discussions of the day's events. "I still can't believe Percy was the court scribe," Ron said for the third time, shaking his head over his potions notes. "He's going to be absolutely unbearable this summer." "He did look very official," Hermione acknowledged, not looking up from her ancient runes translation. "But honestly, the most impressive part was how composed Sirius remained throughout. After everything he's been through, I'd have expected more." "I don't know." "Bitterness?" Harry suggested. "He's saving that for private. You should have heard some of his comments about fudge at lunch after you two left with your parents." Ron snorted. "I bet. Dad says the ministry's in damage control mode. They're reviewing other cases from that period to make sure no one else was locked up without proper evidence." The library door opened to admit an unexpected visitor, Professor Lupin, who spotted them and approached with a smile. "Hard at work, I see," he observed, glancing at their scattered notes. "I won't interrupt for long, but I wanted to check on you, Harry. Today must have been quite overwhelming." "A bit," Harry admitted. "But in the best possible way. Sirius is finally free, and we're already discussing summer arrangements." Lupin nodded, his expression warming. "Sirius mentioned you might split your time between him and your aunt and uncle. A sensible compromise, given the protective enchantments. He's working on making his family home habitable," Harry said. "Though he doesn't seem thrilled about the place." "No, he wouldn't be," Lupin agreed with a grimace. "Number 12 Grimmauld Place holds difficult memories for him. But it's magically secure and belongs to him outright, which makes it practical for now." He glanced around, ensuring they were alone in their corner before continuing more quietly. "Harry, Sirius mentioned you asked about the Shrieking Shack passage. He suggested you might come to me for the full explanation." Harry straightened, remembering Sirius's cryptic comment. "He said it was your story to tell." "Indeed." Lupin hesitated. "It's not a short explanation, nor one for a public setting. Perhaps after your defense against the dark arts exam tomorrow." "My office, around 4 o'clock. "I'll be there," Harry promised, curiosity piqued. After Lupin departed, Hermione gave Harry a knowing look. "I think I've figured it out already," she whispered. "But it's definitely his story to share." "You know what the passage was for?" Ron asked, surprised. Hermione bit her lip. "I have a theory. But let's focus on exams for now. That transfiguration test isn't going to study for itself." Monday's exams passed in a blur of ink-stained fingers and frantically recalled facts. Harry performed reasonably well in transfiguration and exceeded expectations in defense against the dark arts, where his Patronus demonstration earned him full marks and an approving nod from Professor Lupin. At 4 o'clock sharp, Harry knocked on Lupin's office door, finding the professor packing books into a large trunk. "Come in, Harry," Lupin called, setting aside a stack of graded exams. "Just tidying up a bit." "Are you leaving?" Harry asked, alarmed by the half-empty bookshelves. Lupin smiled ruefully. "Always perceptive." "Yes, I've tendered my resignation, effective at term's end." "But why?" "You're the best defense teacher we've had." "Thank you for that vote of confidence," Lupin said, genuinely touched. "Unfortunately, certain facts about my condition are likely to become public knowledge soon, making my position here untenable." "Your condition?" Harry repeated, confused. Then understanding dawned as pieces clicked into place: Lupin's monthly illnesses, always coinciding with the full moon, Snape's potion deliveries, the Whomping Willow passage leading to the Shrieking Shack. "You're a werewolf." Lupin didn't seem surprised by Harry's deduction. Yes. I was bitten as a child. By the time I reached Hogwarts age, my parents had nearly given up hope of my attending school. But Dumbledore had just become headmaster, and he made special arrangements. The Shrieking Shack, Harry said, understanding fully now. The passage was created so you could transform safely, away from other students. Precisely. The Whomping Willow was planted the year I arrived, guarding the secret passage. Each full moon, Madame Pomfrey would escort me through the tunnel before my transformation. The howls and shrieks villagers heard were mine. Lupin's expression turned distant with memory. The supposed hauntings of the Shrieking Shack were a convenient cover story Dumbledore encouraged. And my father and his friends figured it out, Harry guessed. That's why they became animagi, to keep you company during transformations. Lupin looked impressed. Very good, Harry. Yes, by our 5th year, James, Sirius, and Peter had mastered the Animagus transformation, an extraordinary feat for teenagers. As animals, they were safe from infection and could help keep me in check during the full moon. That's why their map nicknames reflected their animal forms, Harry realized. Moony for you, Padfoot for Sirius's dog form, Prongs for my dad's stag. And Wormtail for Peter's rat, Lupin finished, his tone hardening slightly at the mention of Pettigrew. We were inseparable, the Marauders, as we called ourselves. Your father and Sirius were the leaders, the most talented, the most daring. Peter and I followed in their wake, me, grateful for their acceptance despite my condition, Peter, I now realize, drawn to their power and protection. He sighed, returning to his packing. Those were different times, Harry. Before the war escalated, before suspicion and fear tore friendships apart. Is that why you're leaving? Because people will be afraid of you when they learn you're a werewolf. Parents will object to a werewolf teaching their children, Lupin said matter-of-factly. And they wouldn't be entirely wrong to worry. Despite the wolfsbane potion Professor Snape has been brewing for me, which allows me to retain my human mind during transformation, the risk can never be eliminated completely. That's not fair, Harry protested. You're a brilliant teacher. Your condition doesn't change that. Lupin smiled sadly. The wizarding world has never been particularly fair to those with conditions like mine, Harry. Or those with mixed heritage, like yourself. He paused in his packing. Which reminds me, I have something for you. He retrieved a small wooden box from his desk drawer. This belonged to your father. Sirius entrusted it to me years ago for safekeeping, with instructions to pass it to you when your Veela traits emerged. Harry accepted the box, opening it to reveal a simple silver bracelet set with small blue stones similar to the azurite in his ring. It's a focusing channel, Lupin explained. Different from the control-oriented ring. While the ring dampens your aura entirely, this bracelet helps direct it precisely. James used it primarily for Quidditch, where complete suppression would have hindered his flying bond but unfocused projection would have distracted other players. I've been having exactly that problem, Harry said, examining the bracelet with new interest. I know. Professor McGonagall mentioned your challenges during matches. Lupin smiled. The bracelet should help. It's meant to be worn with deliberate intention, you focus on where you want your aura to flow, and it helps channel the energy in that direction while minimizing spillover. Harry slipped it onto his wrist, immediately feeling a subtle difference, not suppression like the ring, but a sensation of his Veela energy becoming more directed, like water flowing through a channel rather than spilling in all directions. Thank you, he said sincerely. For this, and for everything you've taught me this year. Not just about defense, but about my father, about controlling my abilities. It's been my privilege, Harry. Lupin hesitated, then added, I know Sirius will be your primary guide regarding your Veela heritage moving forward, as is right given his role as your godfather. But if you ever need another perspective, my door is always open to you. I'll remember that, Harry promised. And I'll write. I'd like that, Lupin said warmly. Now, I believe you have a history of magic exam to study for. Binns is notoriously particular about Goblin Rebellion dates. With exams concluded, a strange sense of anticlimaxes settled over the final days of term. While most students celebrated their freedom by lounging by the lake or playing impromptu Quidditch matches, Harry found himself drawn back to Hagrid's hut, where final preparations for Buckbeak's appeal were underway. "Committee's coming tomorrow morning," Hagrid explained as Harry helped him groom the hippogriff's gleaming feathers. "Last chance to make our case before they decide." "Are you nervous?" Harry asked, noting how carefully Hagrid polished Buckbeak's talons. "A bit," the gamekeeper admitted. "But we've got a strong case now. Not just your connection with him, but letters from experts, testimonials from students who've worked with him successfully." He smiled at Harry. "Even that business with Quicksilver recognizing your Veela nature helps our argument that hippogriffs respond to magical intention rather than acting aggressively without cause." Harry had been practicing regularly with both Buckbeak and Quicksilver, refining his ability to direct his Veela aura toward specific magical creatures. The new bracelet from Lupin proved particularly helpful in this regard, allowing him to channel his energy with greater precision than ever before. "I'll be there for the appeal," Harry promised. "I've arranged a demonstration of how Buckbeak responds to different approaches, mine versus a neutral approach from Hermione." "That'll help," Hagrid nodded approvingly. "Show them it's not just about natural hippogriff temperament but about how they're approached." He patted Buckbeak's beak affectionately. "This fellow's got a right to fair treatment, just like anyone else." The following morning found Harry, Ron, and Hermione making their way to Hagrid's hut, where the committee for the disposal of dangerous creatures had already assembled, 3 elderly wizards in formal robes, looking simultaneously bored and officious. Lucius Malfoy stood slightly apart, his cold gaze following Harry as the trio approached. "Ah, Mr. Potter," said the committee chairman, consulting his notes. "I understand you're here to provide a demonstration regarding the hippogriff's behavior." "Yes, sir," Harry replied politely. "With your permission, I'd like to show how Buckbeak responds to different human approaches, demonstrating that the incident with Draco Malfoy was a result of improper interaction rather than inherent aggression." Lucius Malfoy's lip curled. "The beast attacked my son unprovoked. No demonstration will change that fact." "That's what we're here to determine, Mr. Malfoy," the chairman replied mildly. "Please proceed, Mr. Potter." Hagrid led Buckbeak into the paddock, where the hippogriff immediately perked up at the sight of Harry. Careful not to rush the protocol, Harry bowed formally, maintaining eye contact until Buckbeak returned the gesture. Only then did he approach, allowing his Veela aura to connect with the creature in the focused manner he had practiced. The committee members watched with interest as Buckbeak not only accepted Harry's approach but showed clear signs of affection, bowing his head for scratches and eventually folding his legs to rest peacefully beside him. "Now," Harry explained, "my friend Hermione will demonstrate a proper but neutral approach, following the same protocol, but without the specific connection I've developed with Buckbeak." Hermione stepped forward, executing a perfect bow and waiting for Buckbeak's acknowledgement. The hippogriff responded appropriately, allowing her to approach and pet him, though with notably less enthusiasm than he had shown Harry. "As you can see," Harry continued, "Buckbeak responds well to anyone who approaches with proper respect and follows the established protocol. The incident with Draco Malfoy occurred because he disregarded Hagrid's instructions and approached disrespectfully, making insulting comments." "Preposterous!" Lucius interjected. "You expect us to believe a hippogriff understands insults?" "They understand tone and intention," Harry replied calmly. "I'd be happy to demonstrate that aspect as well, if the committee wishes." The chairman looked intrigued. "Please do, Mr. Potter." Harry nodded to Ron, who had agreed to play the role of disrespectful visitor. Standing at a safe distance, Ron called out, "You're not so impressive. Just an overgrown chicken, aren't you?" The effect was immediate. Buckbeak's feathers ruffled, his posture stiffening as he turned toward Ron with an indignant squawk. Before the hippogriff could move, Harry channeled his Veela aura more intensely, projecting calming energy that settled Buckbeak almost immediately. That, Harry explained, is a controlled demonstration of what happened with Malfoy, except that I've intervened to prevent Buckbeak from responding defensively. In the original incident, there was no such intervention because Hagrid was attending to other students and Malfoy ignored warnings about proper approach. The committee members exchanged impressed glances, making notes on their parchments. Lucius Malfoy's expression had darkened considerably. "Most illuminating, Mr. Potter," the chairwitch said. "Your ability to communicate with the hippogriff is quite remarkable." "It's not just me," Harry clarified, conscious of not wanting his Veela abilities to become the focus. "Anyone can interact safely with hippogriffs if they follow proper protocol. Hagrid taught us all the correct approach in our very first lesson, which Malfoy chose to ignore." The demonstration continued with testimonials from other students about their positive experiences with Buckbeak and Hagrid's thorough safety instructions. By the time the committee adjourned to deliberate, even Lucius Malfoy seemed to recognize his position had weakened considerably. "The committee has reached a decision," the chairman announced when they returned. "Based on the evidence presented, including today's demonstration and expert testimonials, we find that the hippogriff Buckbeak is not inherently dangerous when properly handled. The incident with young Mr. Malfoy appears to have resulted from improper approach rather than unprovoked aggression." Hagrid let out an audible gasp of relief as the chairman continued. "Therefore, execution is not warranted. The committee recommends that Buckbeak remain in Rubeus Hagrid's care, with the stipulation that safety protocols for student interaction be documented and approved by the Hogwarts Board of Governors." The formal verdict was entered into record, and the committee departed, leaving a fuming Lucius Malfoy behind. He approached Harry with barely concealed fury. "You seem to have developed quite the talent for thwarting my objectives, Potter," he said softly. "First the diary, now this. One might almost suspect interference." Harry met his gaze steadily. "I just believe in fairness, Mr. Malfoy. For people and creatures alike." "How noble," Malfoy sneered. "Your Veela tricks may impress the committee of doddering fools, but don't think your newfound abilities will protect you indefinitely. The ministry tends to develop regulations for those with mixed blood, especially when they demonstrate unusual influence." The threat was thinly veiled, confirming Sirius's warnings about potential ministry restrictions. Before Harry could respond, another voice joined the conversation. "Is there a problem here, Lucius?" Sirius Black approached from the direction of the castle, his stride purposeful and expression coolly challenging. Though still thin from his years in Azkaban, the past week of freedom had already improved his appearance considerably, new robes, healthy color returning to his face, and an air of confident authority that commanded attention. "Black," Malfoy acknowledged stiffly. "I was just discussing the committee's curious decision with your godson." "How fortunate I arrived in time to join the conversation," Sirius replied, his tone deceptively pleasant. "I've been meaning to speak with you about the Black family's traditional seat on the Hogwarts Board of Governors. I understand you've been occupying it temporarily in my absence." Malfoy's expression tightened. "Through my wife's connection to the Black family, yes. A tenuous connection at best," Sirius observed. "I've already filed the paperwork to reclaim all Black family positions and assets." The minister was most accommodating, something about expediting amends for past injustices. The implied threat was clear. Malfoy's influence, partially built on his access to Black family resources and positions through his marriage to Narcissa, was now under direct challenge from the rightful head of the House of Black. "We'll discuss this another time," Malfoy said coldly, turning to leave. "Come, Draco." Only then did Harry notice Draco standing a short distance away, having apparently arrived with his father for the committee's verdict. The younger Malfoy's expression was surprisingly conflicted as he followed his father back toward the castle. "Sirius!" Harry exclaimed once the Malfoys were out of earshot. "What are you doing here? I thought you were in London sorting out your house. And miss your last week of term?" "Not a chance," Sirius grinned. Dumbledore invited me to stay at the castle as a guest. Something about wanting to discuss summer arrangements for you in person. Hagrid, who had been celebrating Buckbeak's reprieve with Ron and Hermione, spotted Sirius and bounded over. It worked. They cleared him, he exclaimed, enveloping Sirius in a bone-crushing hug before the smaller man could dodge. And it's all thanks to Harry's special way with creatures. Careful, Hagrid, he's still recovering, Harry cautioned, though he couldn't help smiling at Hagrid's enthusiasm. Right, sorry, Hagrid released Sirius, who staggered slightly. Just so happy, for Beaky and for you, Sirius. Never believed you were guilty, not deep down. Thank you, Hagrid, Sirius said, straightening his robes with dignity. I understand you were the one who rescued Harry that night. I've owed you my gratitude for that for 12 years. Hagrid's beetle-black eyes grew suspiciously moist. Did what anyone would have done. He was just a tiny thing, sleeping through all the chaos. He trailed off, overcome with emotion. Anyway, you're here now, and that's what matters. Both of you come up for tea later, yeah? We'll have a proper celebration for Buckbeak. As they made their way back to the castle, Harry filled Sirius in on the details of the appeal and Lucius Malfoy's thinly veiled threats. Not surprising, Sirius frowned. The Malfoys have always feared what they can't control. Your Veela abilities represent exactly the kind of influence they prefer to monopolize, the ability to persuade and direct others. He implied the Ministry might create regulations specifically because of me, Harry said, voicing his concern. Is that possible? Possible, yes. Likely? Not immediately. Sirius looked thoughtful. Fudge is still in damage control mode over my wrongful imprisonment. The last thing he wants is another controversy involving the boy who lived. But long term, we need to be strategic about how your abilities are perceived. They paused near the lake, where students were enjoying the June sunshine, some swimming in the shallows while others lounged on the grassy banks. The key, Sirius continued, is controlling the narrative. If your Veela traits are seen primarily as an extension of your magical talent, similar to being a natural at transfiguration or having an affinity for certain magical creatures, it becomes harder to justify restrictive regulations. As opposed to being seen as a dangerous influence? Harry guessed. Exactly. And that's where your work with creatures like Buckbeak is particularly valuable, it demonstrates a positive, controlled application of your abilities. Sirius smiled approvingly. James would be impressed with how you're adapting to this heritage. It took him much longer to find constructive applications. The mention of his father reminded Harry of something he'd been wondering since receiving the bracelet from Lupin. Sirius, how much of my dad's Quidditch talent was natural skill versus his Veela abilities? Sirius considered this thoughtfully. A fair question, and one James wrestled with himself. The truth is, it's impossible to separate completely. His Veela heritage enhanced his natural connection with his broom and his spatial awareness in flight, but those talents had to exist in the first place to be enhanced. So it's not cheating? Harry pressed. No more than being naturally tall is cheating at basketball, Sirius replied firmly. You're using abilities you were born with. The ethics lie in how you use them, not in their existence. This perspective helped settle something that had been bothering Harry since discovering the extent of his Veela influence. He wasn't using unfair advantages, he was learning to work with the magical inheritance that was rightfully his, just as any wizard learned to channel their particular magical strengths. Now, Sirius said, clapping him on the shoulder, I believe we have a celebration to attend at Hagrid's. And then perhaps you can show me this firebolt I sent you in action. I've been dying to see you fly. The final days of term passed in a pleasant blur of sunshine, freedom from exams, and the novel experience of having Sirius present as a combination mentor, guardian, and friend. The announcement of his exoneration had been published in the Daily Prophet, turning him from feared criminal to celebrated victim of injustice overnight. Students who had once cowered at the mention of his name now watched him with fascination as he moved about the castle, occasionally stopping him to ask about his experiences or simply to apologize for having believed the worst. Sirius handled the attention with a mixture of grace and deflection, neither seeking the spotlight nor shying from it completely. With Harry, however, he was fully engaged and present, making up for lost time by participating in everything from pick-up Quidditch matches to chess tournaments in the Gryffindor common room, where his presence was warmly welcomed by McGonagall despite not being a current student. On the penultimate evening before the Hogwarts Express would carry students home, Harry sat with Sirius on the castle steps, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and crimson. They had spent the afternoon reviewing the arrangements for summer, 2 weeks with the Dursleys to maintain the blood protection, then alternating weeks between Privet Drive and Grimmauld Place, with additional visits to the Weasleys and potentially a holiday trip. "It's more freedom than I've ever had in summer," Harry said happily. "Even those weeks with the Dursleys will be better knowing they're limited and that I have somewhere else to go. And someone making sure they treat you properly," Sirius added, a hint of steel in his voice. "I'll be checking in regularly, even during your stays there. Your aunt and uncle may not be thrilled about it, but they'll have to accept it." Harry smiled, imagining the Dursleys' faces when confronted with his wizard godfather making impromptu visits. "They'll hate it. It's brilliant." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as the giant squid lazily waved a tentacle above the water's surface. Eventually, Harry voiced a question that had been forming in his mind throughout their days together. "Sirius, what was it like for my dad when he first discovered his Veela heritage? Did he struggle with it like I have?" Sirius leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "In some ways, yes. It emerged during our 3rd year, though less dramatically than yours. James noticed girls paying him more attention, professors seeming more charmed by his excuses, that sort of thing." "How did he handle it?" "Poorly, at first," Sirius admitted with a slight grin. "He went through a phase of using it deliberately to impress people, especially your mother, which backfired spectacularly. Lily was never affected by his aura and found his attempts to turn up the charm transparent and annoying." Harry laughed, enjoying this glimpse into his parents' complex relationship. Eventually, Sirius continued, around 5th year, James realized his Veela traits were most valuable when integrated naturally into who he was, rather than deployed as a separate tool or trick. Once he stopped fighting it as something foreign and started accepting it as simply part of his magic, he found a balance. "That's what I've been discovering too," Harry said. "When I try to suppress it completely, it's exhausting and eventually fails. When I direct it intentionally but naturally, it works much better." Sirius nodded approvingly. "The Potter Grimoire helped James reach that understanding, as I imagine it's helping you. There's wisdom in those pages built across generations." "I've been reading it regularly," Harry confirmed. "The entry from Fleamont about ethical boundaries was particularly helpful." "Your grandfather was an exceptional man," Sirius said warmly. "He welcomed me into your father's home when I ran away from my family at 16. Treated me like a second son." His expression grew distant with memory. Fleamont understood better than most how to balance natural gifts with ethical responsibility. His business success came partly from his Veela charm, but he was scrupulously honest in his dealings. The sun had nearly disappeared beyond the Forbidden Forest, the sky deepening to indigo as the first stars appeared. From this vantage point, Hogwarts spread below them in a tapestry of golden windows and ancient stone, the place that had become Harry's first true home. "This summer," Sirius said, breaking the comfortable silence, "we'll continue your training. Not just controlling your abilities, but exploring their full potential. The Potter Grimoire covers the basics, but there's more to learn, subtle applications, ethical considerations, historical context." "I'd like that," Harry said eagerly. "Professor McGonagall has been brilliant, but having someone who actually knew my dad and how he managed things." "Exactly. And speaking of your father," Sirius reached into his robes, withdrawing a small package, "I have one more thing for you. I've been saving it for the right moment." Harry unwrapped the package to reveal a silver photo frame containing a moving wizard photograph he'd never seen before. It showed his father as a teenager, perhaps 15 or 16, sitting by the very lake they were now overlooking. As Harry watched, the teenage James looked up from the book he was reading, a subtle silver glow momentarily surrounding him before he consciously tamped it down, grinning sheepishly at the camera. "I took that during 5th year," Sirius explained softly. "One of the few times I managed to capture the visual manifestation of his aura on film." He was frustrated that day because he couldn't maintain control while concentrating on something else. "Sound familiar?" Harry nodded, mesmerized by this tangible evidence of his father experiencing the same challenges he now faced. "It's exactly what happens to me when I'm studying or really focused on something. The control slips." "James eventually mastered it, as you will," Sirius assured him. "But I wanted you to see that what you're experiencing isn't unique or strange. It's your birthright, a connection to your father and his father before him." Harry traced the frame with his finger, watching his teenage father repeatedly concentrate, glow, control, and grin in an endless loop. "Thank you," he said simply, unable to fully express what this glimpse of shared experience meant to him. Sirius squeezed his shoulder in understanding. "Keep it close. When the control exercises frustrate you or the ministry bureaucrats make noises about regulations, remember that this path has been walked before. You're not alone in it." As darkness settled fully over the grounds and distant stars reflected in the still surface of the lake, Harry felt a sense of completion that had eluded him all year. His Veela heritage, which had begun as a confusing and unwelcome complication, had become a bridge, to his family history, to a godfather he never knew he had, and to a deeper understanding of his own magical nature. The silver fire that had awakened in his blood that August night had forged new connections while strengthening existing ones, illuminating a path forward that was uniquely his yet grounded in generations of Potter history. Whatever challenges lay ahead, ministry regulations, public curiosity, the ongoing process of mastery, he would face them with knowledge, support, and the growing confidence that came from understanding one's true nature. As if sensing his thoughts, Sirius spoke again, his voice quiet but firm. "Your mother once told me something about James that I've never forgotten. She said what she loved most about him wasn't his charm or his talent or even his courage, but his capacity for growth, his willingness to recognize his mistakes and become a better person." He turned to look directly at Harry. "I've watched you this year, handling a difficult magical inheritance with grace and integrity beyond your years. James would be proud, yes, but more importantly, he would recognize in you that same essential quality Lily saw in him. The ability to take what life gives you, however complicated, and forge it into something worthy." The simple truth of these words settled over Harry like a warming charm. He didn't need to be perfect in controlling his Veela heritage, he simply needed to approach it with honesty and integrity, learning and growing as he went. Just as his father had done. "We should head inside," Sirius said after a while, noting the deepening chill in the night air. "Big day tomorrow, end-of-term feast, and I hear Gryffindor's won the House Cup again." "3rd year running," Harry confirmed with a smile, carefully tucking the framed photograph into his robes as they stood. As they walked back toward the castle, its windows glowing with welcoming light against the darkness, Harry felt the familiar warmth of his Veela aura flowing through him, no longer a strange and frightening power to be contained, but simply part of who he was and who he would become. The silver fire burned steady, a legacy of blood and truth that connected past to present and illuminated the path ahead. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.